Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this first regular meeting of 2022 of the Pine Hill Shores Board of Commissioners to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask our clerk to just give us a quick readout of about how many people are tuning in online.
We have 10 attendees tonight, and would you like me to name them?
Sure, 10 sounds too many.
Okay, we have Bill Osomsky, Christine Voss, Cindy Schersching, Dan Kolnick, Jimmy Beckham, John Everhart, Paige Gillespie, Ron and Linda Pearson, Susan Phillips, and Wendy Boss.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And before I ask if anyone has anything to add or delete, I would like to propose that we add an agenda item under Mayor and Commissioners reports right after the last public comment period, where we will discuss our COVID policy as far as concerns, the opening of town hall and how we go about conducting our business.
So after public comment, you said?
Yeah, it would be under the agenda item 11, Mayor and Commissioner reports. And I decided to put it toward the end of the meeting so we didn't beat dead horses forever and ever, since we'll probably want to be getting out of here by then. Okay, does anybody have any other additions or deletions they'd like to propose for the agenda? Okay, if not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next item is our disclosures and conflicts of interest. Based on the agenda we have just approved, does anybody have any issues they'd like to disclose or any conflicts of interest? I'll start down here with you, Alicia.
No.
Okay, Bill?
No.
Mark?
No. No.
And no for me. Okay. Next item is the announcements. We have a holiday on Monday, January 17th, Martin Luther King Day, and Town Hall will be closed. On January 18th at 2 o'clock here at Town Hall, the 50th anniversary planning group is going to get together to start scoping out programs for our 50th anniversary. On January 19th at 2 o'clock here in this room, we'll have a special meeting between the Board of Commissioners and the Strategic Planning Committee to unveil the draft of the new strategic plan for Pine Hill Shores. And on February 10th and 11th, which is a Thursday and a Friday, we'll have our Board of Commissioners offsite meeting, but that offsite meeting will actually be on site. So, but, and then on February 24th at 3 o'clock in the Indian Beach boardroom, which is across the street from the the Emerald Isle boardroom, which is across the street from the Emerald Isle Town Hall, there will be a beach commission orientation for newly elected officials. This will give you the history of beach nourishment on boat banks, the 50-year master beach renourishment plan and how that was developed, and an overview of what's on the beach commission's agenda for the next couple of years.
John, do I understand that the offsite's going to be here instead of at the Greenbrier like our representatives in Washington did?
We'll work on that.
Okay, maybe next year.
Maybe Brian can look into that.
It's a Greenbrier for you,
I
Ted.
even took a train down.
Ted, it's a Greenbrier for you.
Right.
Okay, anybody have anything else they'd like to highlight? Anything coming up here? Oh, okay, that brings us to our public comment period. And at this point, I'll turn it over to our clerk, Charlie Rauchi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a few people who want to speak online, so I'm going to give them the chance first. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. We'll start with Wendy Boss.
Yes. Unmute.
We can hear you.
Yes, just a second.
Okay, let me know when you're ready.
Where is the unmute, Charles?
I don't know.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this is Wendy Voss, and Charlie and I bought our house at 120 Dogwood Circle over 20 years ago. We've lived here permanently for over 5 years. Prior to that, we lived in Raleigh and taught at NC State. We wanted to eventually retire at the North Carolina coast, and as we looked up and down the coast, we read the history of Pinal Shores, and we observed the lush green environment here. We thought that the environment reflected an awareness of the importance of environmental stewardship. We have evidence of the effects of preserving Yaupon, Pittosporum, Fatsia, live oaks, and fir trees that have saved our house over the years, as we're on the second row of from the south side of the beach. Without these plants, the salt and wind would have devastated our house. We are against the sidewalks for environmental reasons. We are against the sidewalks because they would increase environmental non-permeant services, and we question the motivation behind the entire initiative. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody like to respond to Ms. Voss? Okay, next.
Next is Yolanda Lozano. Yolanda, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Well, I sent in a letter. Did you not receive it?
I
know
do not have that letter.
you don't. Well, I'm going to have, if you don't mind getting back to me, circling back to me, because I'm going to have to bring it up in my document, and then I'll be able to read it, okay?
Okay, no worries. I apologize.
No problem.
Okay, next we will have Suzanne Wheatcraft. Suzanne, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good evening. My name is Suzanne Wheatcraft. My address is 2 West Court, and I'm a full-time resident and registered voter in Pinal Shores. Tonight, I will share with you my concerns regarding the recent survey on the issue of a sidewalk along Highway 58. In reading through the more than 300 comments, I noticed that there are 43 comments that mention using bicycles or golf carts on the proposed sidewalk. Since this proposed project is for a pedestrian sidewalk, one could assume that these 43 respondents are expressing support for a different kind of project from what is actually being discussed. Assuming that their support is contingent on being able to use a bicycle or golf cart, once you reduce the number of respondents in favor of this project from 339 to 296, and increase the number who don't support pedestrian sidewalks from 318 to 361, the percentage in favor of a sidewalk actually drops to 45.1%, and those who oppose a sidewalk increases to 54.9. This is an analysis of just one aspect of the survey. One could also look at the number of people who wrote comments in favor of sidewalks the entire length of the town and wonder how their support might change if given the information that a public sidewalk that duplicates the private sidewalk already present in Beacon's Reach is highly unlikely. A temporary tax increase to pay for this? I would like for someone to cite for me an instance when taxes, once raised, have ever been lowered. Furthermore, the tax increase is just one aspect of the cost, as there is always maintenance on anything that is built, especially in the harsh environment of a barrier island. Across from Atlantic Station, you can see where flooding has already begun to undercut the new Atlantic Beach sidewalk. And finally, based on a few of the comments, I have become acutely concerned about the widening of Highway 58 and how that could destroy any sidewalk that is present. With so much talk around Carteret County about preparing for all the changes that the completion of I-42 will bring to this area, highway infrastructure improvements for safely handling an increase in traffic will be high on the list of projects. The chance that this could happen should have already been thoroughly explored by our town, especially given our current difficulties with getting satisfaction from DOT on previous actions they took during their last Highway 58 project. Tonight, I have purposely avoided speaking on the many ecological and environmental problems that another built project will bring to our little barrier island town in a maritime forest, and instead have focused on the cost and infrastructure difficulties that the proposed sidewalk will bring. However, do not fool yourself that this sidewalk will not be a detriment to the natural quality of life here in Pine Knoll Shores, because it most certainly will. In addition to I've just got one sentence, I'm sorry. In addition to my allotted time for a public comment at this meeting, I would also like to point out that there's an error on page 18 of the agenda packet. That page of the Arundel engineering cost is missing the line item for the cost where the sidewalk crosses driveways between Mimosa and Cedar. Looking at a satellite image, there are 19 driveways in this section, which represents a missing cost of $190,000 from this proposal. Thank you for your attention and consideration, and sorry I went over the time.
Okay, thank you. Since I believe that many of the comments we'll have tonight may be on the sidewalk topic, and since we're going to be discussing that in much greater detail a little further on in our agenda, I think we will hold off right now on responding to individual comments unless somebody, okay.
Yeah.
All right, next, Charles.
Next, we have Susan Phillips.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Susan Phillips. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I live at 289 Oakleaf Drive and have been a full-time resident of Pine Knoll Shores for 33 years. My comments, too, are about the sidewalk project. I listed my reasons for opposing the project in the recent survey, so I will not repeat them now. And I have attached them to my written public comment that Charlie should have. I'm here tonight to ask you to delay moving forward until open discussions with residents can take place. Thank you to Manager Kramer for your well-written and documented report giving background, project cost, and summaries of the previous surveys and results of the recent one. It is clear that support for sidewalks is still mixed, almost evenly split this time, 339 yes and 318 no, a difference of only 21 responses, and that's with 36 not responding. The most telling results of the survey to me, however, were not the statistics, but the over 300 written comments, as Suzanne has mentioned. 317 to be exact if you eliminate those writing none or no to the question. I hope you all took time to read every comment as I did. I found thoughtful responses, concerns, confusion, opinions, questions of fairness, other ideas, needs, and uses of tax dollars, the list goes on. What this says to me is that further information and discussion is needed. An overwhelming number of residents took time to comment, and their comments and questions need to be considered. When I read the comments, I learned about concerns and needs I hadn't even thought of, and perspectives different from my own. We have been locked down and cut off from town hall and each other for almost 2 years now, without forums and interactions, and our sense of community is suffering. Yes, COVID has been a barrier, but we should not let it be an excuse. It is the very reason the sidewalk issue needs more time. We all need to learn more, to listen, and to discuss the pros and cons sidewalks will have in our community now and in the future. Being well informed leads to better decisions and understanding. Please delay moving forward until open discussions can be had either virtually or in person. If there are no grant deadlines to meet, what's the rush? If you move forward tonight because 48% of residents responded are in favor of sidewalks, you have dismissed the 45% who are opposed. There's enough division in our world today. Let's not let this issue be something else that divides us further. We have time. In conclusion, if the survey's purpose was to gauge current interest in sidewalks, you have 17 pages of comments to consider. If the survey statistics are to be used for decisions, then its questions, sampling, and validity should be examined further. The sidewalk project will affect all of us financially and for some their property. Let's take time to get this right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There, another one.
Next is Ron and Linda Pearson. Ron, are you there? Or would you rather I read the letter?
Do you have his, Charlie?
I do have it.
Why don't you read it? Okay. Maybe they're having trouble unmuting.
Ron and Linda Pearson, 282 Salter Path Road. As we further our discussion of sidewalks along Highway 58, several items need additional study and discussion. 1, do we need sidewalks or do we just want them? As we celebrate our 50th anniversary, there are many things that make PKS unique. One of those is fiscal responsibility. Sidewalks will require an investment in excess of $1 million. The town will probably have to borrow this money, and depending on the amount, rate, and term, will repay this loan with a tax levy on all of the citizens. Will all the current and future citizens benefit from this tax burden for years in the future? Once levied, regardless of the term, will this tax ever be reduced? Probably not, since PKS, like most other small towns, are always looking for sources of revenue. Once it starts, it will never be reduced. 2, safety is another factor. We have existed for 50 years without sidewalks and with speed limits of at least 45 miles an hour. Recently, we have reduced the speed limit to 35, with improving safety as one of the main reasons. Have we given this change a chance to yield the expected benefits? I live adjacent to Salter Path Road. I observed that the average speed limit is probably reduced, but not less than 40. Try driving at a set speed of 35 to 40 and see if traffic backs up behind you. I am as guilty as anyone of reverting back to driving like the speed is still 45. 3, sidewalks are not for use of bicycle lanes and will not be used by runners. These groups will continue to use the DOT paved roadway. Sidewalks will not improve safety to these groups. Sidewalks will not allow golf carts to be used to access neighborhoods up and down Highway 58. 4, sidewalks would be placed on the edge of Highway 58's right of way. There are numerous encroachments in this area to include fences, landscape plantings, and concrete or masonry pillars to mark an entrance. Do we need to remove all of these encroachments to ensure that this law/rule is universally enforced and do not make its way and not to just make way for a sidewalk? 5, I live between Arborvitae and Pinole Boulevard, adjacent to Salter Path Road on the north side, and some of the smallest lots in PKS and on some of the highest ground
in PKS. Placing the sidewalk in front of my house would remove a larger percentage of my buffer from the highway than almost any other place in town. Since lots in this area are elevated, a sidewalk would require 8.5-inch fill regarding in the approach to each of these houses to ensure their autos, not four-wheel drive trucks, can enter and exit without bottoming out. Regardless of where sidewalks are placed, north or south, there will be a requirement to cross this busy traffic corridor. You will have to cross the highway if you want to go to the beach or library. In the summer months, walkers are going to take the shady side of the street, south. In conclusion, do we need or want sidewalks, and are they the best solution for all PKS residents? Ron and Linda Pearson.
Okay, thank you, Ron and Linda.
Next is from Jimmy Beckham. I support the funding and construction of a sidewalk project along the north side of NC 58 from west of Oakleaf Drive to Pineville Boulevard, as outlined in the manager's January 4th report to the board. The project directly addresses long-standing concerns of pedestrian safety along NC 58 and would provide enhanced benefits and options for all categories of pedestrian traffic, recreation, fitness, ADA, etc. It would provide a continuous sidewalk system for the town limits at Atlantic Beach to the west of Pineville Boulevard, linking 3 existing pedestrian crosswalks which have push button flashers. These crosswalks serve as primary crossing points for pedestrians moving between the beachside and Soundside neighborhoods, as well as 5 beach accesses, 4 public and 1 private. It is noted that sidewalks along NC 58 have a priority ranking in the adopted PKS sidewalk and pedestrian plan. I believe this project has merit and addresses our commitment to pedestrian mobility and safety. Thank you. Jimmy Beckham, 123 Oakleaf Drive.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy.
Next is from John and Jamelia Everhart. Dear Board of Commissioners, this letter is to encourage the Board of Commissioners to commence the process of moving ahead on the sidewalk project. As a property owner in the east side of town, we find that the need for sidewalks is not just one of recreation or convenience, but one for safety. For the residents along Salter Path Road, Laurel Court, and Myrtle Court, a trip to the ocean involves walking along NC 58, the north side of NC 58 to Juniper Road to the crosswalk. The road shoulder there on the north side is narrow with an uneven grade. Imagine it's mid-July and your family with children in tow along with a wagon full of beach gear moving along this busy road. This could impact approximately 70+ families that live or vacation between the Old Hampton Inn and Juniper Road. I feel that many PKS residents and commissioners are unaware that the problem is as crucial as it is. In January 2017, the Shoreline reported the mayor's memo. This year will be exciting as always. Our newer stretch of sidewalk will be ready for your exercise and transportation. You will be able to go from Town Hall to the Food Line in Atlantic Beach by just crossing the highway twice and never walking on or riding on Salter Path Road. As far as connectivity and safety, this is a huge step forward. This hasn't happened. The goal of walking the entire east-west length of town is certainly not as important as allowing 70+ families access to the ocean. Let's face it, people do not come to the beach to walk to Food Line. Back in February 2016, Mayor Jones wrote in the Shoreline, remember, we are putting sidewalks in for one of 2 purposes. Connectivity to keep us folks safe from Salter Path and mere safety, primarily near beach accesses. A section of sidewalk on the north side of Salter Path Road would accomplish both these objectives. In earlier sidewalk master plans, this section was considered a high priority. I believe it was listed as second priority. And as we see other sidewalks being planned, funded, and built, we do not understand what has changed to cause our neighborhoods some to become a lower priority. John and Jamelia Everhart.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Everhart.
And lastly is from Richard Kavanaugh, 105 Myrtle Court. Please relay these thoughts and concerns to the commissioners meeting in January. I am writing to follow up on the sidewalk issues that have aired several months ago at the commissioners meeting that resulted in the sidewalk survey. I would like to ask the commissioners to address the following topics. 1, what is the result of the most recent survey? How do the survey results differ from the previous surveys? 2, after reviewing the pedestrian master plan, I noted that there were designated areas and priorities established. Upon further review, I noted that most of the priorities were not completed within the designated timeline, with many never begun at all. A, what actions have been taken to rectify the safety issues for pedestrians walking alongside 58 to access the crosswalks that lead to the beaches? B, how will the commissioners assure that priorities and timelines are accomplished as established by the master plan? C, if the survey results are similar, let's not do any other survey and let's not rewrite the master plan. We are on borrowed time as it concerns the pedestrian safety along Highway 58. We need immediate action to begin our mitigation of the high risk that looks straight at us in the eye. 3, my thoughts. You only get what you pay for, and my thoughts are free. A, beginning sidewalk construction at the existing crosswalks. B, work out in both directions until the sidewalks connect. Priority to Juniper and Mimosa with a goal to connect along the north side of 58 from Oakleaf Drive to Pine Knoll Boulevard. C, the time for discussion has passed us. We need action. D, we need funding and a budget to support the timeline and accomplish the mission, pedestrian safety in Pine Knoll Shores. Respectfully, Richard Kavanaugh, 105 Myrtle Court.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. We're going to be taking this up in some detail in a few minutes. But I'll just ask, does anybody have any comment they would like to make right now?
Just a clarification, I certainly appreciate all the comments. It is not the intention for the commissioners tonight to actually make a decision on that. This is just a discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Oh, don't forget Yolanda.
Go back to Miss Boss, I believe.
Yeah, Kozlowski or something.
Yolanda Lozano.
Yolanda, are you there?
Yes, I am, and I'm ready.
Okay, I apologize for that again.
No problem. I was having computer issues too, but thank you. My name is Yolanda Lozano, and I live at 126 Mimosa Boulevard. I'm a full-time resident since 2015 and a PKS registered voter. I agree with the comments listed in the survey that are against the building of the sidewalks. I'm opposed to the construction of sidewalks for many reasons, primarily because of the environmental impact of more cement, the destruction of vegetation that protects our homes against salt and wind, and the possibility of more impermeable cement surfaces, which only add to more global CO2 emissions. I have issue with the pedestrian planning group objectives listed in the background memo dated 1/4/22. This memo does not mention as an objective the environmental impact of concrete sidewalks from PKS Boulevard to Oakleaf Drive. I wonder why that was not a consideration and part of their objective. I moved to PKS because I appreciate the maritime forest as part of this neighborhood. Contrary to what some believe and have said, we are better off than Atlantic Beach or Emerald Isle by protecting our natural setting. I don't think we should strive to be another Myrtle Beach or Emerald Isle. I have friends who live in Emerald Isle, and when they visit me, they are amazed at the neighborhood and the amount of trees that are in between the homes. We have nothing to be envious of and many reasons to be proud of our neighborhood. I have some additional points. Charlie mentioned in the shoreline that there was a 30% response to the sidewalk survey. To rely on a 30% response of homeowners to the sidewalk survey to make any decision is not a good idea and not fair. If little more than half of the 30% either approve or disapprove of the sidewalks, that means about 16% of the population are making a decision for the 100% of the community. We need a bigger sample of the community and more discussion in order to go forward if we do about this issue. Remember, there's a reason why all the streets in PKS are named after trees. We want to keep them, and they are important. If we want a safer neighborhood, we can add more crosswalks with flashing lights on Highway 58 and lower the speed limit on the side streets. In conclusion, we live here at the beach. And quite frankly, I see more people walking on the beach and not alongside Highway 58. Thank you for allowing me to voice my concerns, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Is that it? All right, thank you. The next item is the consent agenda, and we have 4 items on the, pardon me?
We have one more comment.
Okay.
Christine Voss.
Hi, yes, thank you. Mine will be very brief. As a resident, I am concerned about the way in which the sidewalk survey was created and how it is being interpreted. I'm not convinced that we, the town of Pine Knoll Shores, are doing either appropriately, as this is a field of scientific study that requires expertise. I'm also concerned that decisions about sidewalks are being made with little to no data being collected about how our local streets, sidewalks, or trails are currently being used. This information could be easily obtained by using a simple GoPro to sample, sampling, spurts of video. I would be happy to provide some guidance on sampling so that you could make statistical analyses. I am not in favor of the installation of sidewalks because I do not see their necessity. In addition, I think that the widening of vegetation along roads, such as Oak Leaf Drive, will lead to increased speeding and ultimately create a greater level of safety hazard on this street. And from what I understand, North Carolina Department of Transportation has already documented this effect of widening the field of view and speed going along with that. I'm not in favor of the increase in taxes to pay for the destruction of town vegetation. And I'm not for using tax dollars to create additional impervious surface. I'm concerned that the decision to add sidewalks will not be sufficiently vetted. This is not a subject to take lightly on a barrier island. I have more to add, however, at this point, I just wanted to voice my opposition for sidewalks and ask that you collect more data. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that it?
Yes, that is it.
Okay. Okay, we have the next item is the consent agenda, and there are 4 items on the consent agenda. The December 8th, 2021 meeting minutes, park volunteer appointments, a resolution to accept a new records retention schedule, and tax discoveries and releases. What I'd like to do is go through each one of those and ask if anybody has any comments or questions on each of those 4 items. And then at the end, we'll just take one vote on adopting the entire consent agenda. Okay, does anybody have any changes or corrections they'd like to make to the December 8th, 2021 meeting minutes?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. On page 6 of our packet, the 3rd bullet point from the bottom, which is a mystery tank on the beach, it references Commissioner Cox made a recommendation to receive written consent. And he brought to my attention earlier tonight that I made that recommendation.
Okay,
So that should be changed.
we'll make that change. You got that, Charlie? Anybody else? Okay, the next item, park volunteer appointments. There are 2 volunteer application forms in your agenda packet, one from Deborah Mangum and another one from a new resident named Mary Cox, who would like to become members of the Parks and Recreation Committee. Does anybody have any comments or questions on either of those candidates?
They were both at the last meeting.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for volunteering.
Thank you. The next item is the resolution to accept new records retention schedule. Clark.
Yeah, I have a question about that. And I just left the message on the phone, I think. All it says is just what the routine of it is. Does it tell you when you have to get rid of them or when you may get rid of them?
When you may get rid of them. So if local ordinances expand beyond what the state record retention schedule is, then we can use our own.
And the reason I asked that question is that some places interpret that as because the state says you get rid of them, you get rid of them. And when you take things like documentation, for instance, of setbacks, or we've had meetings as to how to, the zonings have changed, like Pine Knoll Boulevard, or not Maritime Woods, or Pine Knoll Village back in the day. Some of that information, even though we may have had the right to get rid of it, it's really worthwhile to have. So I just hope we don't use, I hope material as good historical documentation can be maintained. And having been in the records business for 30 years of my life, it makes it easy to just get rid of stuff. And I just hope we're careful about that. That's documentable historical information. Maybe historical information we would keep for a while and not go by the limited.
Maybe we could
That's all.
organize a little group of people to put our heads together and maybe think about how we're going to make the decision of what's worth keeping and what's
Just,
all right
at
to
this
go.
point, it's just to make a tone issue, that's all, and how this works out.
Just a question. I mean, we have an administration or administrative committee.
Yeah.
If Charlie comes up to that, or the staff comes up to that point and they want to get rid of stuff, is that something that the administrative committee just ought to take a look at?
Yeah,
In terms
put a
of-
list of things in front of
I just want to raise a
Yeah,
caution.
that's a
That
good
way-
point. Absolutely, I agree. I agree.
If I can just, for the most part, most of what our files are, a lot of times what we're purging is not, it is not stuff of that nature. I mean, it's like, you know,
permits.
bills, permit, you know what I mean? It's not, a lot of stuff we hold on to, we both hang on to a lot of stuff. But a lot of the stuff in the records retention thing is you get rid of it after 3 years, and 3 years often is the very earliest you can get rid of anything. And you can always be more restrictive. And there's a good part of the retention schedule that we set, the town can set on a number of things. And so we're often more conservative in purging stuff. Of course, we have to watch out for, I think it was a few years ago, Sonny was telling us that attic was getting a little iffy with the banker's boxes that were all out there. So we had held on to a little too much. But we've got a good system down. But yes, absolutely. There's some things that we set aside because you never know.
Yeah, and Clark,
I understand, it's just tone I want to
Clark's,
get.
just to underline Clark's point, you know, we were looking through files from the 70s, 80s, and 90s to start the framework of the stormwater work 12 years ago, and that was helpful. But we're keeping everything on major events. You know, that example you did, that was in minutes, and of course we have all those, but yeah, we can do that.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you very much. I don't mean to belabor.
Okay, the final item is tax discoveries and releases, and I think they're the total, grand total of $9.
Wow. I will we approve the consent agenda.
Yes, as been. Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
before we move forward, we have one more public comment that was missed.
okay,
It'd be all right if she speaks.
all right, we'll go back on an item on the agenda, please.
Cindy, are you there?
I am. Thank you very much. And I apologize for interrupting the additional flow of conversation, but I did want to provide some comments and some considerations around the sidewalk issue. And I take off on what Christine Voss has said and what Susan has said when I do that. I personally wonder why we're talking about it again after we've talked about it in depth multiple times over the last years. I'd really like to understand why it keeps coming back, but I assume it's because somebody doesn't like the answer that we've gotten so far. My other comments are really around the need to have valid, accurate data. And I question if the decision's going to be made on this survey alone, that we may be misled. If we have data that tells us that this particular survey is representative of our community in actual numbers of people who are full-time versus part-time, for example, then I'm good with it. But I have not seen that kind of validated information. I think it's really critical, particularly given how close the full-time versus part-time people view sidewalks. Getting it right and taking the time to do that is absolutely important. The other thing to keep in mind while we're looking at these data, these are not respondents, these are not people, these are households. So they represent 2 or more people typically. We were told only one household could actually enter the survey. So, the data reflects perhaps something different than people that we are commonly thinking of. And I just offer this as a thought. If the sample is representative, should we weight full-time responses more than part-time people? Again, I just offer that as a thought. I really do believe if we're going to fully explore this issue that we have to frame it within some sort of potential cost. We were told we would not get grant funding. That means we're working literally with a fixed budget that we have to typically give up something to get something. So we're going to have to give up something. And what that something is makes a big difference. If you tell me I have to give up 2 police officers' salaries to develop sidewalks, I'm going to say don't do the sidewalks. But if you tell me, that there's a much smaller, less impactful issue that will be not completed, and then we can do the sidewalks, then I may be more amenable to that. But people understand and make better decisions when they're given trade-offs. So frame the issue and perhaps in terms of trade-offs. Lastly, which has been mentioned multiple times, is the environmental impact of the project has to be considered, and I haven't seen that factor in the cost equation. Again, thank you for letting me interrupt your additional conversation.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Okay, moving right along, we're now on agenda item 7, PKS sidewalks and PKS pedestrian master plan action. Town Manager Brian Kramer, please.
Hey, Mayor and Commissioners and everyone online, good evening. This is kind of going to be a 3-part brief. Myself, Julie, and Charlie are all going to chime in. And it sounds like everyone's read the agenda item, which is great. So we're certainly engaged on this one. But nonetheless, we'll quickly go through the background. Almost a year ago in February, at our offsite in this room, the board directed the staff to explore what's next for sidewalks. From this, pedestrian planning group PPG4 was formed. And the specific objectives of the group was to provide recommendations to the board on what's next, as far as what's next to build, provide any funding options to ensure that any recommendations consider pedestrian safety, and recommend options for public input. So there were 3 meetings last year. This board report, the PPG reported, actually I reported on behalf of the PPG in July, and the focus was on 2 sections of sidewalk, or 2 sections of pedestrian walkway. A sidewalk on Oak Leaf west to Pine Knoll Boulevard, on the highway on the north side of the road, a sidewalk, I should say. We hadn't determined the location yet. And then a nature trail in the Roosevelt Natural Area from the Public Safety Building to the inn at Pine Knoll Shores, and that was on the north side. The PPG recommended that a survey of all property owners in PKS take place to better gauge public support of sidewalks in general, and these 2 segments in particular. And the board reviewed this survey and directed that cost figures be included prior to distribution. Accordingly, in August, we contracted with Arundel Engineering to prepare a feasibility study. 2 main objectives were to provide estimated construction design costs, and we specifically asked them to look at the north side, south side question on the sidewalk to see which one might be more advantageous.
And we hung the entire feasibility study on the website. The highlights of his findings were a sidewalk on the north side of the highway is deemed most feasible. And then he provided costs from each segment. And that's in front of you in the packet. Comes out to about $1.4 million, that total there, excluding the natural area. And I'll come back to that. So in September of 21, the board decided to strip the Roosevelt natural area out of the equation, not the least of which we didn't have a response from the state whether or not they'd be agreeable to it, and we still don't for that matter. The survey was mailed out in early November of last year, and the deadline was the 10th. And then last month, the board directed the staff to develop funding options for proposed sidewalk and obtain proposals for design. So in this memo, I want to report back on the sidewalk survey results, and Charlie will help me with that. Julie and I, mainly Julie, will talk on some funding, and I'll provide I'll give you the cost figures on the design proposal, and then a recommended next step. So with that, that's the lead in. Before I turn it over to Charlie, any questions or discussion items on that intro?
No.
Charlie?
While we're waiting for Charlie to come up, I want to thank Charlie for his work on this and for putting all the 300 and some odd comments into our agenda packet tonight. I thought the comments were extremely enlightening, and it shows that people, the extent I think to which people are involved. And I think all the comments here pretty much covered every issue that we have uncovered in our discussions of the sidewalks with different stakeholders over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Okay, thank all yours, Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in November, the Board of Commissioners approved the sidewalk survey to be sent out to residents, taxpayers in Pinole Shores. And this survey was sent out from the last week of November till December 10th, 2021. And we sent out 2,280 surveys to all taxpayers in Pinole Shores. And from that, we were able to get 693 respondents. And I'd like to reply to one of the comments in the public comment period. You're not going to ever get 100% response on a survey. There's always going to be a separation between your survey data and the total population. So we are forced to make some assumptions about the population when you're not able to get data from the entire population. And in general, 30% response rate on a survey this wide scale is pretty impressive. So I do appreciate everyone in the town who was able to send back a survey. So into the nitty gritty, from the 693 respondents, 44% of those reported to be full-time owners, 289 specifically. For part-time, it was 54.64% or 359 submissions, and 9 reported absentee landlord or 1.37%. And if you're online and you'd like to look at the full survey data, the link there below has all of the raw data on Excel files as well as charts and a PDF with all of the survey comments, which is also available in the agenda packet. So for the question asking about sidewalk importance in Pinole Shores, we'll use the mode for this analysis. 5 was the most common answer with 255 selections, and that was followed by 1, which is sidewalks are not important to you at all, with 180 selections. Around 30% of all selections for that question were between 2 and 4. Slide, please. Looking at the sidewalk vote, The original question, would you support a townwide taxpayer-funded expansion of a sidewalk on Highway 58 from Pine Knoll Boulevard to Oak Leaf Drive? For example, in a situation where the town is not able to receive any grant funds for this project, the estimated total cost is $1.45 million with a 1.5 cent increase per $100 of valuation to your annual tax bill over 10 years. And for that question, 339 respondents voted yes, they do support this, and 318 voted no, they do not support this. And this was with 36 submissions missing from the total of 693. Next slide, please. So I did a little bit of statistical analysis for this question. I was interested to see if households with people under the age of 18 would vote differently than those without. And running a chi-squared analysis, which for simple terms of this meeting, it tests if there is some sort of significant difference between the two variable types. So houses with under 18 and houses without. And with a chi-squared value of over 5, this is found to be true in 95% of sample testing. So based on the statistics, we assume that houses with people under 18 are more likely to vote yes for sidewalks than no. Next slide, please. I then did the same thing for respondents with people over the age of 66. Using the same methodology with the chi-square test, we found that it is statistically significant that households with people over the age of 66 are more likely to vote no for the sidewalks than houses without. Next slide, please. And then finally, did the same test with your type of ownership, whether you're a part-time or a full-time owner. For this question, I combined absentee landlord and second homeowners together just to simplify the data a little bit. And what I found here is that there was not a statistically significant difference on if you were a full-time or a part-time owner. So that is not a good indicator of if you would support sidewalks or not based on this survey.
That is interesting.
And I would just like to close off with, I didn't want to do a deep analysis of the comments. I figured it'd be more effective to make all of that information public for everybody to read. Everyone had great comments and brought up issues that a lot of others may not have considered. And we do appreciate everyone who took the time to do so.
We do appreciate everybody
Thank you.
responded. Does anybody have any questions or for Charlie on the
No.
survey?
Great job, Charlie.
I think it's great that all the comments are made available for everybody.
Mhm.
It's very transparent. Everything we're trying to do is with submission or questions and answers by everybody who wants to have input.
Mhm.
And we're sharing that with everyone.
I think that's a good comment, Bill. And I would just like to add to that, that over the last 15 years, I think we have been very transparent every time we've taken up any issue related to sidewalks. And we bent over backwards to pull in a vast and varied group of stakeholders from throughout this whole town. So I want to thank Charlie for his efforts on this too. Thank you.
Thanks.
So there was discussion at previous meetings and then in many of the public comments that were submitted with Charlie's survey regarding past surveys. So I listed the surveys, and I won't run through all the numbers in detail right now. It's right in there, but we had a survey in 2007 with 487 respondents, with 54 listed as very important, sidewalks being very important. And this was a recreational survey, and this was the highest number of the 14 recreational activities listed. In the 2012 PARC survey, there were 438 total respondents. 367 people responded to the question of what recreational activities you'd like to see come to PKS, and 204 of them said they wanted to see sidewalks. And the number of those who responded most important was double of that of the next highest number, which was hiking and nature trails. In July, and this is probably the most extensive one we did, in July of 2015, the Strategic Planning Committee commissioned Lee Padrick, who helped us write the initial strategic plan, to conduct a survey, and 920 residents responded. And that was a more general question. In general, do you support sidewalks and PKS? 70% responded yes. When asked if you would support it if the state funded 80% of the cost, and this is right when the state transportation program grant was opening up and we thought we'd be eligible, it increased to 80%. However, when we then asked if the town funded all costs, support dropped to 48%. So clearly the cost was an issue then too. And in 2017, the PARC survey that actually John helped put together as the PARC chair, 57% of the respondents were in support of a taxpayer-funded expansion of sidewalks, with just about 43 were opposed. So my analysis of all those is we've been split right down the middle almost every time, with a slight tilt toward having them each time. And of course, there's criticism of every survey. There have been on each one of the ones we sent out, understand that. But that's how they played out and what we did send out. Moving on to funding, we've been unsuccessful in acquiring grants from DOT, and we applied for 3. And we started doing that when Scott Sherrill was here, and we were applying to the state in their new state transportation improvement program. I don't believe, when we looked at their scoring methodology, that we will ever fund this, our sidewalks here through the STIP, unless it changes. And we all know the financial condition of NCDOT now. I didn't put this in the memo because, quite frankly, I didn't see it during my research and found it afterwards. But Clark and John might remember we actually did apply for a federal Tiger grant almost 8 years ago, and we did not receive that. That was with the federal DOT. So knowing how other towns have funded sidewalks here, I don't believe grant opportunities are forthcoming. Clark and I were discussing earlier today, there are some smaller towns with less financial resources from us getting funding from the state for sidewalks. I don't believe a beach town would likely see that. So
like Cedar Point, you mean?
Cape Carteret.
Cape Carteret, that's right. Yeah.
But it's a shared bikeway. It's not a.
Yeah, that's correct. But they did get, I believe, 500,000 from the state in the recently approved budget for
multi-use path.
So there may be some opportunities around the margin, but on a wide scale, 80-20 grant like we've seen for stormwater projects and such, I don't see that as forthcoming. So on the subject of funding options, staff believes the best and most prudent manner, if we were to move forward here, is to do this through debt financing. And I'm going to ask Julie to come up here and talk about the excellent work she did on debt financing options.
Okay, I'm going to speak off of page 44, which I know is busy, but you just really have to focus on one end of it, and we'll walk through that. So what I did here was looking at a $1.5 million project, got some informal rate quotes. I ran these for 10 and 15 years. Typically right now, we would not be able to get longer debt, probably past 15 years. Local government commission just doesn't like you to do long-term stuff. And really, I think this is just my opinion, but I think after 15 years, you're gonna have to start repairing some stuff anyways. And so then why are you still paying on the principal of that project after 15 years? So in the very middle of this page, you have the annual debt payment at that rate for that number of years. And what I did here was
just compared to our tax values, putting in on scenario 1 at the top, tax revenue with an increase of 1.75 cents. So in that column, that tells you what 1.75 cents gets us, because 1 cent right now is getting us right around $100,000. And then when I compare that tax revenue to the debt payment, how do we sit? Well, as you can see in that scenario 1, we're short a little bit, so we're using reserves for the first 3 payments for a little bit. And then if that 1.75 cent tax increase remains, you're gaining a little bit back. And scenario number 2, do the same thing with the 1.5 cent tax increase for the project. And there, you're not meeting the debt payment at all. Now, here's where Julie doesn't like red numbers, especially when they're negative. So from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, and from the LGC's perspective, they would not be in favor of us floating debt when we're using savings to pay for part of it. I have to prove to them that I have a dedicated source to do it. And if I'm not raising taxes, I'm not doing it, y'all are, but you know what I'm saying. If I'm not showing that there's tax revenue to meet that debt and I'm using savings, they probably won't like me so much in general. It's just not good practice. But I ran that anyways for a 1.5 cent tax increase for the 10-year term. And then the bottom repeats the same exercise, just running it for 15 years with slightly lower tax rate increases. In scenario 1 on the bottom, it's a 1.25 cent increase. And again, not meeting the debt payment for 4 years, then we're meeting it. And then in scenario 2, with just a 1 cent increase, we're not meeting it at most of the term, which I probably would not even offer that up to the LGC as something I would want to do. Now, because I'm talking about using reserves for that, let me talk about reserves just a little bit. So our internal financial policy for the general fund sets a goal for our unrestricted fund balance at 50%. For the fiscal year ending June of 2021, we were at 47. 3 years ago, before Hurricane Florence hit us, we were at 66. In this year's budget that we're in right now, and after the budget amendment that I ask you to approve tonight, we will have appropriated in the budget at least $400,000. So if I use that whole 400 and we spend everything that we have in the budget to spend, we're going to be bringing that 47 down to 37. And right now, what the local government commission, so back when
you said 50, you want to be at 50%. Is that what you said?
Our internal policy is 50%.
Okay.
Our internal goal, I should say. So back when Brian and I first started here, the local government commission had like a set percentage that they would not want units to go below. They've now kind of changed that philosophy recently, and they compare you to similar units. And so similar units for us, they're saying 34%. I do not believe those similar units are beach towns in hurricane risky areas. That's why our goal is 50. So I would not recommend even using a little bit of reserves for something like this, because A, it's a capital expenditure. It would be debt payment, so LGC probably would not be in favor of any of that. And we just need to build our reserve. And that is all I have.
In your scenarios, like I said, take scenario number 1 here, 1.75 cents. The small amounts that you take out of reserves in the first 3 years are more than made up in the latter years.
In the latter years, yes.
Yeah. So we wind up ahead, actually, of $103,000 at the end of the 10 years.
Right, if you maintain that
right
tax rate. Right.
Alicia.
So I guess my question is a little off topic, but it'll come around. When we were going to buy a ladder truck, were we going to raise taxes for that, or did we have a plan of?
There was, so when we were talking about buying the ladder truck, we had some designated reserves built up to pay, I think, $250,000 down on it, and then issue debt the rest of the time. And so whatever we were going to do when we did that, you would have to then raise taxes in order to pay that.
Okay.
Or meet it in some other,
way.
yeah.
Okay.
That one's kind of expensive.
But with this amount, I would believe, we haven't issued debt for large amounts. We've done little things. So it's been a few years actually since I had to go to the LGC for approval, but I have to prove to them and I have to sign it. I have to prove to them how I'm going to pay the debt.
Yeah. So I think the last thing was the knuckle truck that we did.
Yeah. And that was only like, what was it, 138,000? Yeah. And vehicles, usually the LGC doesn't need to approve.
Okay.
But the fire truck and the sidewalk are approximately the
Same amount of money.
Same amount of money, yeah.
Yeah.
So FEMA's paying for the fire truck.
Now, yeah.
So we're going to get a new fire truck without any
We're getting a break on that.
local funds being used for it, which really is a trade-off. We would have had to raise taxes if we do this to buy a fire truck.
That's right.
And now it's just basically a trade-off.
Or next time a fire truck.
The actual trade-off, since somebody brought up the issue of trade-offs, what's being traded off here is your tax money, the extra 1.75 cents of tax money if we were to fund the sidewalks with over 10 years and raise taxes 1.75 cents. So that's the trade-off. The trade-off is the taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, the fire truck is a great example because the fire truck was intended to be purchased before we had these excess funds to deal with. The fire truck was intended to be purchased and, obviously debt floated on that.
Yeah.
So.
But that's why you have the designated revenue. So you're adding to that.
Right.
You're supposed to be adding to that every year so that at the end of the 15 years, you have a greater proportion of it.
Julie, can you talk a little bit to the thing that was raised by one of the folks about the driveways? I hadn't noticed that. But when you look, I guess it's attachment A2, page 18. The other segments have a driveway modification line.
Right, I looked at that when
And
that came up.
If we're talking about 19 driveways, we're at 10,000 a piece, that's another 190,000. So is that number that we're talking about, the 1.454, do we add another 190 to that, 190,000 to that?
If that is, I'm sorry, hang on, let me get back to the.
I thought it's already included.
Just a line.
If we're going to go across
Right,
19 driveways.
if that is missing from that quote, because the 1.45 is simply adding together the three segments. Hang on one second.
Well, that's what I did, yeah.
Yes.
I
that's
just
what it
added
is.
them. It's
And the
1.454.
and the engineering design or whatever comes to 1.5. So yes, if Arundel missed driveway modifications
So Arundel
there
missed.
was three on the Pine Knoll Boulevard to Arborvitae. Item number 7 on their estimate had 3 of them at $10,000 each. And then, like you said, the Cedar Road to Atlantic Beach has 1, but then in the Mimosa to Cedar,
I'm
there
guessing
doesn't
they feel
appear
like
to
they
be-
don't have any. Is
Maybe
that
there
what they're
aren't.
saying?
No, there's a whole lot of them.
I think a clarification, we're going to have to ask the engineer.
So Arundel
My
missed.
assumption would be
So they-
adding another 190.
Yes, on this.
Yeah, but my point is they missed $190,000 in their
No,
estimate
they
to us.
didn't. It says drive up. There's more than 3 driveways between
No, this
Pine
is-
Knoll
this is
Boulevard.
on-
I know, but I'm saying, I think they're looking at driveway modifications. It's going to cost them a bunch of money because,
Mimosa to Cedar.
well, I'm looking, I know there's more than 3 driveways between Pine Knoll
I
Boulevard
think
and
it just needs to be
Arborvitae.
clarified.
It's a clarification
3,
because those are
yeah.
hard driveways that we're looking at with this small.
It's either that or they're saying there are no driveways between Mimosa and Cedar that have any modification requirements.
Correct.
Right.
But I think that's a simple question for the engineer before we finally get serious
Yeah.
on it. Yeah, no question about that.
Patrick.
Ryan, I got a question that goes back to this. The engineer used 25% contingency. What was it on the east side project? Did they use the same 25%? That seemed
No, I
high
think
to
that
me.
came up when we first discussed this.
No, I don't
think-
remember that.
I believe, Ted, I have to look to be certain, but I 15%.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. That seems like an exorbitant contingency fee, 25%.
How would this contract work? Would this be, and I just educate me here, do we do firm fixed price contracts or?
Yes.
Okay, so anything, anywhere this estimate falls short of what they end up having to pay themselves for the work, they absorb.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it gets
No. So
negotiated.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question, Robert. So the way it works is, we've got now estimates ahead of the design, but
Right.
during the design,
Right.
First contract number one will be with a design consultant. We can ask him, if we choose the same one, we can ask him to give us construction proposals a second time. I'm not sure we need to. But we pay to the design consultant fee. Part of his fee package, or his fee is bid packages with all, and they're extensive. They're extensive. You don't do those in-house. And then we bid them out. And so the construction costs could come in higher or lower than this. No question about it.
Okay, but the contract that we sign, you're saying would be a firm fixed price contract?
Yes, the contract we eventually sign with the contractor is firm fixed.
Okay.
It's not a cost plus or anything else. So.
Okay.
I'm concerned, number one, after reading all the comments and where we are at this point in time, I personally am committed for a plan to move pedestrians from Atlantic Beach to Pine Knoll Boulevard. I'm extremely concerned by the assessment that was done as to which side of the street and so forth. And I've read it in detail, double read it today in detail, copied some of the papers. And the reason, and first of all, I'm committed that we should make a decision and go ahead and do it as of July 1st, just so you know that I'm committed to that, okay? But the it is the big question. I firmly disagree that someone builds a house and plants something in the right of way, and so that is given as a reason not to have a sidewalk there.
Yeah.
Sorry. And that was a whole lot of the things along the south side. In the assessment, I read it twice, there was a whole lot there. I think he knew where you wanted it ahead of time, and he did everything to justify in that direction. Sorry, I believe that. And I have some proof of that here. The other thing that bothers me is, over the last year and a half, I've been involved in this, can be blamed for it or whatever, for the last 12 years or so, 07, 06. And yes, to do or not to do has always been in the 50-something% range. And being committed for safety, we tried to push forward those things that were the greatest percentage need. Where there were near accidents crossing in Hampton Inn, the old Hampton Inn, 15 years ago. The problem Mimosa and so forth, and the sidewalk between Mimosa and Arborvitae. That seemed like, at the time, to me, it seemed like a no-brainer. And that's where the quotes of the previous mayor, and those quotes came from trying to connect parts of town in somewhat of a, if you're on the streets, you could get to Pine Knoll. If you did Arborvitae and Mimosa, you could get from our Oakleaf all the way to Town Hall, somewhat of a circuitous route, but you could get there. But one of the things things have changed in that period of time significantly. And one of the things is that I believe was 2010, 12, 14, that MLIL put in their multi-use path, correct? About then?
One segment was actually, their first segment went in like 07 timeframe, but.
From MLIL to up to the beach.
Correct. The latest date that you said,
did a whole-
that was the most recent.
And so that kind of a newer concept came into it. I put forward a year ago as a suggestion, which has been development since, East Coast Greenway, which has offers of funding and so forth for now a 10-foot or so multi-use path, of which Interestingly, Pine Knoll Shores is on the map. Now, I've got copies to give to everybody, just so you have the background. It's on the map. And there's funding potentials there for a multi-use type of path. Now, I wrote in, okay. Oh, they're different? Oh, they should be the same.
Have you explored how firm this funding is or what you have
No,
to do to?
no, the information's here for you to read, make your own judgments. I'm not speaking anti. I'm speaking, I'm committed that I think, reading all the comments, and I understand the emotional side of it. I do understand that. But it seems to me for broad public safety reasons, there should be a way for people to move along the corridor. North side, south side, we can get emotional about that too. But there are about 5 or 6 lots that are only 8,000 square feet that will affect dramatically on the north side, and they will not be affected no matter, other than maybe 1 or 2 on the south side. A lot of those driveways are long, the adaptation is easier, it's more shallow and so forth. So I just asked you to look at this so you see something I think hasn't adequately been considered. It's just sort of blown off, not considered. And so I think it could have a potential have an effect on funding and so forth. But what I would say to you is a commitment. I do think we have to set time. July 1st, for instance, maybe is a good time. That's budget time and so forth. Set a time to do one or the other and then go to try to commit to do it. Absolutely. Now, that may sound like strange for some of you because it seems like different, but it really isn't. We've tried to move along in this period of time of priorities at the time and funding and what we thought. The reality is true. State funding just isn't there for us. It just is not going to be there. But I do think we had that brief phone conversation in this room about 9 months ago, right? Since that time, East Coast Greenways in the state of North Carolina have signed whatever, how much of a commitment that is interesting, but they have signed an agreement to be tied in to NC parks. Now, what the rationale is that, we all can read it and figure out how it is. But that gives us a pipeline more into state funding from another side. For a multi-use, where someone can walk and ride a bike, not use, just so it's clear, not use golf carts. The issue about, someone wrote in the comment, the golf carts and arborvitae and arborvitae court. Clearly, if we're going to do that, we need to come up with the issue of how to get from arborvitae across to dogwood, and then I think we don't have to worry about it. But we need to maybe put some emphasis on getting a cross space right there at arborvitae. And that's an issue that's not going to go away, but just so it's there. Anyway, I'm sorry, but I just want, I don't want to criticize anybody particularly, but when I read through that report the second time, I kind of thought the numbers of driveways on the south side that have either a pillar post or whatever, and that was given the reasons not to have it there, and it's in the right of way, I don't think that's a valid reason, period. Sorry.
Well, Clark, if I may, I think that just because you have a PhD in front of your name, it's just like having a commissioner in front of your name. Doesn't mean necessarily know anything. But it also doesn't mean that you're naive as it relates to numbers and statistics and surveys and that sort of thing. I do think there's a concern that was raised about how we are interpreting the results of the survey. And it has been stated to me a number of times, and I think there is justification for this position, that people, when they answered this survey, when you talk about bicycles, I'm not sure they understand what they're going to get, because what's being proposed is a 5-foot wide sidewalk.
Which bikes are not allowed on technically.
Which bikes are not allowed on. I violate that rule too.
I do too.
Okay.
I do.
It says here,
In truth in lending, but my point is, we spend $1.5 million. We then have a bunch of people that thought they were going to have what is being interpreted as a multi-use path on the north side, they then get pissed off at the commissioners because they didn't give them what they thought the survey was representing. And this is my interpretation. I'm not saying this is how they're viewing it, but I think that there are many that do. So that gets to the issue of that was brought up earlier. If those folks that really want a multi-use path or something they can ride their bicycle on, and we build something that does not support that, are those people really then in favor of what we're talking about on the north side? And if you look at the numbers from, I guess it was where's my notes here, 2017, you actually have a decrease in support for and an increase in opposition to. In 2017, you had 57% for and 42% against. Now you have 51% for and 48% against. And I think we have to recognize that survey in 2017 is not the exact same survey that we have now. So it's a little bit of apples and oranges, but if we're taking the overall assumption that people are in favor of a sidewalk, it's actually decreased in number compared to the 2017 survey. So it gets to the question of what I think Christine Voss and Cindy Schersching brought up. Are we really interpreting what is being stated in the survey correctly? I wouldn't mind having some folks, and Charlie, no disrespect to you, you know a lot more about Kai stuff than I do. I wouldn't be opposed to having folks who really know something about surveys and data giving us perhaps a very educated assessment of what the survey gives us. We're all interpreting individually what that survey says. I'm not sure we're all interpreting it accurately. So I think those are just a couple of thoughts.
I'd like to just comment on that point a little bit. I think you can only read so much into a survey. All surveys are going to have faults with them. And, like the number of people in 2017 that responded was only like around 350 on that one, whereas the other ones were much higher. But sometimes a survey is just what it is. It's a survey on its face value. I do not believe that we are going to make a decision on whether to build sidewalks here based on the results of a survey.
Okay.
And I don't think we should.
Okay.
And
Fair enough.
I think Sigmund Freud probably said this best. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Yeah. I mean, in the same vein, I think, a survey is just a survey. But I believe that, given the growth that's been going on in the town and the fact that we're on the verge of another spurt of growth right now, that this is the time where we really have to make a decision. I agree with Clark on that. And I think we need to be proactive in consideration of public safety before we have an accident as an action forcing event. I'd also like to point out that our new strategic plan that we'll be discussing later tonight and again on January 19th highlights pedestrian safety as the first objective under the infrastructure area. And it says, the first objective says, provide safe and well-maintained public streets and pedestrian walkways.
I got something.
Ted, please.
I agree with the mayor and Clark that it's time for us to do something. This last survey is basically different than any of the other surveys because this town has changed radically in the last 18 months. If you look at the number of young people in town today, compared to what it was in 2017, it's night and day.
I like that.
I think we had the superintendent of schools in, and basically he said, we've got about 100 children involved that enrolled in schools, which we never had before. If anybody's on the road early in the morning or in the afternoon, you're aware that the school buses are here. Charlie, in two numbers that he brought up just leaped out at me. The people over 65 were marginally against it, and people with children under, the 18-year-olds were exceedingly in favor of it. And if you think about this, I look around this people, guys, we are the past of Pine Knoll Shore. Well, we're the present, but we're the past. And these young people, these young couples moving into town with families, they're the future of Pine Knoll Shores. And that's what I think we're elected to do, is to look to the future a little bit. Whether it ends up on the north side or the south side, Clark, I've walked part of both sides of it, and I understand what you're saying. Part of it is it's nice on the north side from the standpoint that the people on the north side don't have to cross. They've got the whole sidewalk to get to the crosswalk.
Yeah, nothing's 100%.
Yeah, nothing's 100%.
No, you're right.
More people
But
live on the
we're
north side.
filtering the people from the north side where the majority of the people live to the flashing lights.
But the effect on those lots are the greatest too.
Yeah,
Well, I understand, and
absolutely.
those 5 lots are a problem. I understand. I looked at those, and that's a tough situation, but it's still solvable according to the engineer.
Well, I know he said that, but if you take a piece of graph paper
I understand.
with
Those
the
lots
little dots,
those lots are
just
small.
do basically the measurements, it's not quite as simple as you think it is.
I agree with what
Because
you
you only
said.
have 3 inches of clearance, 3 or 4 inches.
I agree with what you said about what's in the right of way. I mean, that should not be an impediment to doing anything.
And I worked for College of Engineering for 20 years, so I kind of know.
Anyway, this is a different town, guys. We have young people today. It's not like it was in 2010 or 2017. We've got kids walking around the streets today that we never, ever had before. So I think this is a matter of safety. These kids are going to be trying to get to the beach, and this is a way to move it. I talked to Chief Ryan about it, and he might want to make some comments later, but it scares him too. It scares the police department that we've got kids trying to not without a sidewalk along the road to get to the beach. That's important. It's why people move here, is the beach.
I first became an advocate, Ted, when we had 3 grandchildren. We were old still, but 3 grandchildren, 5, 7, and 9. And we were trying to get to the park. At that point, the other parks didn't have swing sets and so forth. We tried to get the one that at Ramsey, and we had friends there, but try to take kids along in a little bike to try to get to Arborvitae. Of course, now it's different, but the advocacy to have some way to get along that road. Those landscape trailers moving along and so forth, kind of scary.
John, I've got 2 more. I wasn't quite finished.
Sorry.
If you look at the traffic, we discussed putting that sidewalk in from Mimosa to Arborvitae, and there was a big question on whether it was going to get used, and it's used a lot. And I think that's important. It tells us what's going to happen in the future. I think your idea of including this into the budget stuff is the right answer. We're not going to make a decision on this tonight. I'm in favor of including it in the budget process for this year. So we will have a decision in March or April at least, which fits what you said in terms of.
I'm in favor of that also, with the one proviso that I hope people think about, is I'm not in favor of things zigzagging back and forth.
No, of course not.
Like he has it here.
Yeah, no.
The one from Mimosa to Arborvitae is a sidewalk that should be there anyway. And the one going, and then when you get down to Roosevelt Acres, it should go all the way to the town line, in my opinion. And I believe if you made it asphalt, because I've been involved in a project like something like this a long time ago, If you make it asphalt instead of concrete, these prices are going to be, the concrete normally, the size has not much to do with it at 5 feet to 10 feet. It's about 50 to 80% more than asphalt because they can take a machine, an 8-foot machine with additions on it, and just go right down. So
Is it worth the finance committee taking a look at this in advance of the offsite and perhaps provide some thinking to the commissioners at the offsite as a review instead of us trying to just process it all ourselves?
Well, what do people think? I mean, it can't hurt, but we'll probably go into much greater detail on the financial issues when we discuss the capital improvement plan.
Well, just judging on the conversation, would be for me to go back to Wade and ask for construction estimates on the north side of the road. If the board concurs with Clark for the same segment.
Yeah.
So from the red light.
The north side or the south side?
Ocean
Yeah,
side.
got it.
The ocean side, from the red light to the Atlantic Beach border.
See what he says, you know.
I just think they said that that was the lowest cost option, the one, I mean, I thought they were very clear that we had asked them that question already. And the report stated that they recommended. Why are we keeping asking? If they've already made their, how are we going to ask them until they change their mind?
No, it's not, we're not asking for any type of analysis which one is better. But if we believe the south side is better for the reasons Clark pointed out, impact on property owners, then no, it may cost more. And Clark, you know, I give you my word, I didn't lead John Wade to do one way or another. I simply listed all the things that we said, curb cuts, vegetation removal, everything.
I understand that, but
And cost.
But it seemed like the plan up to then was always north side. I can tell you, in my involvement from '07, we never considered, sitting down around here, we never considered the pitches of the sidewalks.
Oh,
or
yes,
anything like
sir.
that.
But I mean,
There was items like where the most people lived, and in fact, the comment was made that the people on the beach can walk along the beach to get to the neighbors. They don't have to walk along the road.
Well, Clark, if I may, the plan is the north side of the road. That's what's in our pedestrian master plan. That's all my point.
I know that, but times have changed from then. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not recommending we go back to and ask them for another analysis, but if we're going to look at north versus south side of the road, and I'm hearing maybe some interest in multi-use, all I'm suggesting, we have a dollar figure for that as well.
But we're already on the north side with what we have. The plan is to stay, we don't want to, like you said, zigzag back and forth.
No, but part of this analysis, Alicia, is taken, for instance, where the person put brick things on the right of way, and that's a cost of ours?
But if I may, because we have commissioners who weren't on board or folks weren't on board, just a quick explanation of why existing sidewalks are where they're at. From Oakleaf East, we wanted to connect to Atlantic Beach.
Yes, and they're on the north
And that's
side.
where it is. From Oakleaf West, and they paid a portion of it, we designated that crosswalk as one of the most dangerous. And we wanted people to get from our 10 parking spots to that crosswalk safely. From Arborvitae to Mimosa, which was self-funded, we thought that was one of the most important segments for connectivity. For both Pine Knoll Boulevard, which was done most recently by the contractor, and then to the public safety building, that was to connect what was identified in our pedestrian master planning as the town destinations, if you will.
Right.
The town hall complex, the aquarium, the safely get, and the library. All I'm saying is I'm not jumping on board with what Clark's saying, but I'm saying if that will help with the discussion, if we're going to jump on this
To
in
me,
4
it's like
weeks.
now you're connecting what we existing sidewalk to an existing sidewalk. Why wouldn't you it just makes sense to me. I mean, I don't know. I just think it's kicking the ball further down the road, and
That's why I was committed in time.
yeah.
Those, number one, kind of tied on to what he said from Pine Knoll Shores to Oakleaf, a commitment on the part of the state at the time, said by a state representative in here, was we essentially, if we're going to be considered for any grant, had to connect to that boardwalk. We didn't want to connect there. We had talked to the town manager at the time. I don't know, it wasn't the same one, I don't think.
It was.
Okay. Actually asked him to share a little bit on the other side, where it's the offset. That goes back to Roosevelt's, but neither here nor there. And very honestly, we took the least expensive route out and said, we'll only go from the boardwalk up. That will meet the obligation to the state. And then we can compete with grants for the other ones, of which we were successful, except for the one at Arborvitae, correct?
Lisa, I'm not saying
Okay.
we should.
I mean, that's
put sides.
fine.
I'm
So
just
it's a
saying for the
developmental
purpose
thing.
of discussion, I mean, we're only 4 weeks away from the offsite. If
Yeah.
we want to look at that, and for us to run the numbers, I need another cost to the other side.
I think Clark's suggestion has merit, and I think it ought to be pursued.
I'm not opposed to you checking that out, but I can see there's a strong benefit in my mind to keeping it on the north side, to move people from especially the young people, to the lights. And otherwise, they're going to have to find a way to get across the streets. And you heard the lady talking about from
Laurel Court and
Laurel Court, Myrtle Court, all those.
and that whole area with those
Bermuda greens.
Bermuda greens up, that it's a problem. They have to get all the way up to Juniper, which is, and that's really narrow in there.
I would offer that, and I don't want to indiscriminately throw dollars on the table, but if we were to move to the south side, I would offer to the board that we should really think about, and this was the original plan, not just go to the Hampton Inn, but Bermuda Greens, Reefstone, Laurel, Myrtle, get them to the Juniper Crosswalk.
Yeah.
That's a lot of taxpayers. That's a lot of people there. It's not just 8 homeowners in Laurel and Myrtle.
People that live on Oakleaf, on that end of Oakleaf too.
It's
I
true.
used to live right in that corner.
Well, they've got that
Yeah, they've got
crosswalk
the
right there,
sidewalk,
but.
yeah. Okay, Commissioner Connect, please.
I don't see where spending additional money or cost estimate in the south side is going to do us any good at this point. What we need to look at is who are we trying to help? Where is the greatest danger? As Ted mentioned, it's the people on the north side we're trying to help the most to get to the other side to travel. The engineers previously said it's going to cost more to put it in the south side. We already know that. So what are we going to gain by going back again and getting another estimate? They already said it's going to cost more. Is it $100,000, $200,000? Is that even going to affect our decision? Our decision should be made, where do we want it? Where's the best place to put it? And then we move ahead with, if we're going to do it, getting firm costs.
And the answer to that specific question, and I thought the most robust discussion with public input, was the initial pedestrian master plan, which was the north side. I only offered that as to help talk.
To me, it's not going to make any difference.
Following on Bill's comment, if you look at that stretch on the south side, all the way up to Pine Knoll, up, well, at least to Mimosa, because I bet you don't have a dozen people living full-time in that stretch on the south side. That's pretty much all second homeowners. If
And
you
they're
look
not
at the
going to
north
be,
side, it's all these young people that we're talking about with this town changing, they're living on the north side of Highway 58. And that's what, the main reason we do this, in my mind, is safety. I can remember vividly, we stopped parking on Highway 58 about 6 years ago. And I remember I called you and said, I just saw some little kid get out of a car and they're excited to get to the beach. And he ran around the back of the car and right out in the road, and a car slammed on the brakes and just missed him. And these same young people are living on that side of the road, and we're going to have to get them. At least we've got the push button lights. They can get there on the sidewalk if it's on the north side, which on the south side, we're going to have to solve that problem with maybe more lights or more crosswalks
Which DOT is gonna.
Can I just ask you to look at the last
Sure.
four pages of this when you're talking about funding?
Yeah, but funding's a different issue than we're, the decision needs to be, where do you want it? Where's the best place to put it if you're going to do it?
I understand,
And
but
then you
funding's
move
part of it. If you look at what people wrote, that's part of it too.
Well, sure it is.
That's all I'm asking. That's all.
Well,
Just look
but
at that.
funding is an issue in the sense that while we say we have 4 options here, we really only have one option.
Yeah.
One option, the only option is to raise taxes in order to do that. That's the only option that we're being given.
Right.
Yes.
Except we're really lucky that we're getting FEMA money, which we would have had to raise them to pay for the Cindy Schershing was talking about options and trade-offs, and you got the trade-off. We're getting the money for the fire truck from what we saved on
And the
each.
equipment building and the
And
new
all
roofs.
of that, so, it's.
Julie, on
It's a
funding,
wash.
please.
So the only thing I wanted to throw in here was, remember that we are planning to do water main upgrades along the south side of Highway 58.
Mhm.
And so a concern, and Sunny would absolutely be a better person to weigh in on that, is just having infrastructure upon infrastructure.
Sidewalks have to have the water.
mains are going along the
But that's
south side.
common.
Coupled
That's
with the
common all
electric
across the
company.
country.
So I'm just.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm-
Now you had
I'll
a
bring that up as.
Mr. Mayor,
water main break, you'd have to dig up your sidewalk.
yeah, I just wanted to say that, Robert, we can ask them for more options than just the tax increase if we want to, as we go into the discussions.
Yeah, if there are any other
Well, I think
options.
that would
there's
be
other-
a valid thing to pursue. And based on the 4, I guess my thought is, what the staff has said is they have the 4 options.
I'm not aware of any other funding sources. I'll look
Maybe we
into
have
this.
some, but they're not gonna give us anymore. Huh?
You're hitting your mic with a piece of paper. so,
Oh, pardon me. Yeah.
I did that last month.
I know.
But for the 4
Well, that's still an
options
issue.
that are listed here,
Options are there. People say no
It's-
options are our options.
But that's
it's your assessment, Julie, that which ones would be likely to be, I guess, authorized, if you will, or not looked at with jaundiced eyes, because we really, even within the 4, we don't have 4, because as you said, there's a whole bunch of red in here. So there are only 1 or 2 options in here that we think would be authorized by those who are actually monitoring our financial decisions. Okay.
And I would say you would probably be looking at this 15-year loan with slightly higher than 1.25 cents. So
Yeah.
that you do not have any red lines.
Okay. Can I ask one more question on this?
Please.
It was brought up, and I hadn't really thought too much about this, but do we have any sense for NCDOT widening 58? And I know we've all, at least in the general discussions I've heard, we've just pushed that aside. It's never going to happen. Don't even think about it.
Yes. So when we were still, yes, we do. When we were still talking about the nature trail,
Yeah.
we approached NCDOT about the third bridge issue and the widening issue. Remember, we called them, the state, in fact, asked us to do that. And what I was told by Jeff Cabanis at Division 2 is there's no funding in the 20-year plan. He didn't see it forthcoming. The county was, and all the towns were opposed to it in the last transportation plan. So I don't see it as likely in the next 20 or 30 years, Robert. You know, the discussion of the third bridge was really initiated within Carteret County to DOT as opposed to the other way around. And there's no funding in that for that either. So,
Okay.
so don't see it as likely in the payback period, at least, of this loan.
Well, and that was, I guess, my point, because we're talking about development, not so much within Pine Knoll Shores, although there will be, but on either side. It's my understanding that it's actually DOT that will make the decision if they feel that as an evacuation concern, development or the number of people here that they have to get off of the island becomes an issue, that will be the decision where they decide to either widen the road or put another bridge in Emerald Isle. Somehow they accommodate that requirement. And if in the next 10 or 15 years that we reach that line where they say, now we have to make a change, we're going to widen 58. If we put a sidewalk on the north side, would that widening potentially encompass that sidewalk?
I don't think so.
I know you're not an engineer, and that's not what I'm.
The Department of Transportation says we have to put the sidewalk all the way out to the very edge of the right of way for the highway. And that's far enough, that it's underneath the power lines, basically. And that is far enough back that if they did widen, put an extra lane on there, it wouldn't impact the sidewalk, I don't believe, anywhere. The other point on this whole issue of widening Highway 58 is that I know from my own discussions with the other officials in Atlantic Beach and in Emerald Isle and in Indian Beach, Salter Path, that none of the towns on both banks are in favor of that at all right now. And sure, it would be a Department of Transportation issue, but it would become a political issue as well.
No.
So it wouldn't just be an engineering issue.
Great Karnak doesn't know the answer to that question.
I'd like to, sorry.
Just one final comment on the widening of 58. If common sense were to prevail, they wouldn't widen 58 unless they had
bridges,
additional bridges to get people off the island.
Because that's where
Whether it's one
you're
lane
right.
backed up or two, it doesn't make any difference if you can't get off.
Especially at Emerald Isle.
Yeah, I mean,
Those
that's
two
it.
lanes.
You
That's
gotta
where the
get
bottleneck is, you're
Going to
right.
be a backup too.
Yeah.
There, that causeway. But I would just like to make a couple of other quick points. One is on the, what you can read into the survey. And I was talking to Brian the other day, and he told me of an economist he knows who used to tell him that if you torture the statistics long enough, they're going to confess. They're going to tell you whatever you want. And that's true. The other point is there were a number of people that raised concerns about the impact on the environment. And the impacts on the environment here are the removal of vegetation, the growth of the impervious surface, and the loss of privacy screening for some of the homes that are on the small lots where the sidewalk would impact them. And in my mind, this is a means and ends issue. Where does policy tend when ends are means and means are ends? And many of our goals here are both ends and means. Like if you want to protect vegetation, limit impervious surface, and protect privacy for homes, I don't think the best means of doing that is to deny our citizens or residents access to safe pedestrian pathways. There are better means for protecting vegetation, such as replanting trees and vegetation after construction. You can add fencing and buffers to enhance privacy. And on impervious surfaces, we can use pervious materials. We can also use engineered stormwater retention techniques. And we can also increase or decrease the impervious surface requirements elsewhere as an offset. I mean, there are lots of ways of dealing with those issues other than denying residents access to safe pedestrian pathways.
Okay.
That seems to me like a very expensive way of going about it.
If I may, can we add that into the estimate then? So we're saying that the town is going to pay for replanting and shielded areas with all the things that the mayor just discussed. those have been incorporated into the plan that the town will mitigate for those areas that vegetation or otherwise have been removed. We're saying that we're going to do that. I think it's
Well,
one thing to say that we can.
We haven't said it yet. I mean, that might be a good bite of that 25%.
Well, I think we should. I think we should add that in.
And the way things
Wait,
grow
let me
here
make sure
too.
I understand.
The way things grow here,
Rebuild a
it'll be 6
buffer.
months before it's kind of back to normal anyway.
Let me make sure I understood what you're saying. That 10-foot right away, that people have planted stuff in there. If we destroy it, that we should, the
I
town
thought
should
that's what
pay
the
for
mayor
it.
was saying.
Well,
I don't know about that.
Chances,
That's-
most of the stuff in the right of way is the scrub, the
The
yopon
scrub
and all that,
stuff,
which
yeah.
it's going
I'm
to come
not
back
sure that
anyway.
would cost much money.
Whether we plant it or not, it's going to come back in 6 months.
So we
Things
will not
grow.
replant.
No, trees, I think, and,
It's under the power lines.
I think we will replant. I mean, but it's going to be selective and reasonable and logical.
Exactly.
It's not that we're going to, put hedgerows on either side of the highway.
Well, I guess my only thought, and I appreciate all these comments, we do have people listening online, and they are hearing what I think, Mayor, you just said, which you detailed a number of things, a long list of things that we could do to mitigate the concerns that people have as it relates to the environment. Are we going to add that in? When you say we, that means the town. Are we going to add that into the cost estimate?
I think
And
we
if
need
we-
to
if-
discuss that further at
I
our
agree.
site. It was brought up
That's fine.
tonight for the very first time, really.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I agree.
But I mean, my point was only that we have other means of dealing with the environmental issues rather than just denying people access to sidewalks.
I think we should detail those
Yeah.
for our citizens so that they know what that plan is, how we will mitigate those if we go forward with the sidewalk project.
Right.
I think we need to be really careful because we're in the right of way too. And remember, there's you can't block up the right of way because of just vision down the road and people backing out of their driveways and stuff for a safety issue. So we're going to have to be really careful in building those like any kind of hedgerows or trees and
Yeah, it's
stuff.
just a lot of vegetation in the right of way.
Already.
Maybe shouldn't be there.
That shouldn't be, we're making Clark happy right now.
No, that's not what's making me happy. No, that's not. Remember, the other side, the utilities don't take it out
Plant some
next year.
Absolutely agree.
Is that when's their?
Direct Craven?
Yeah.
I've heard
Okay.
various things. He said 5 years ago, so, but I don't need to check.
Oh, I thought 6 months ago, there was a warning it was gonna be in
All right.
a year.
Do we need a
Let's
motion on this?
At this
Just
point-
we move on at this
Yeah.
point.
At
I would
this
say,
point,
yeah.
we have a recommendation here that we include sidewalk design and construction in the 22-23 proposed budget
Yes.
discussions.
Do we need a motion on that?
Do we need a motion on there or just agree?
It would give me the authority to collect
Okay.
some
I move.
information.
I'd like to make the motion.
Okay.
I move that we do that.
Clark, do you want to say?
I don't get it, sure.
Okay. Any further discussion? Well, we have asked Brian to get additional cost estimates too, correct?
Well, I've kind of heard it both ways, but I think I've got some ways I can figure that out. Like maybe find out what Emerald Isle's costs are and extrapolate and,
Good enough.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll do this again. I'm sure of it.
50-50.
Okay, at this point, we're under agenda item number 8, new business. And the first item is the budget amendment. Julie Anderson, please.
Okay, so this is tidying up some things that the board has approved in the past. And I told you last month that I was going to have this ready for this month. So the major components of this amendment include land surveying services for the equipment building that the FEMA excess funds. That's one of those projects. The sidewalk survey printing and mailing, the social media archiving services that I believe Charlie talked about last month. Unemployment benefits for a former employee, and the UDO consulting services contract. And then the revenue sources for these, other than the designated reserves for unemployment benefits, which still is part of our reserves, is fund balance. And
I
so
move
that,
we endorse the budget amendment as requested by the finance officer.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
So that amount would be in the motion, right?
yeah,
Just
it's fine.
What's
Yes.
proposed?
That's fine.
Okay, the next issue is a request to apply for a stormwater grant. Town Manager Kramer, please.
Make a request that you approve my stuff as fast as you approve Julie's stuff. So,
Can you present it as quickly?
So this is,
I'll hear about that from my coworkers. For clarity, this is simply authorization to apply for a grant, not any expenditure of funds.
We're getting cheeky.
But we've been, this is a continuation of the battle on the east end for stormwater. Phase 1 was completed in 2015, the main element being the vault at Myrtle Court and the gravity line at the golf course. And phase 2 we did last year, in which we put the subsurface line from Yall Pond to the vault at Myrtle Court. So we're trying to improve upon that with phase 3 with the Coastal Federation's help, with a combination of a continuation of the line from Yall Pond to Holly, and then east of the vault, a series of swales and a pipe yet to be designed that would move water from Laurel and Myrtle to the vault on the west side of Myrtle Court. And anyone who's been down there during storms know that's as heavily impacted area as everywhere else. So the North Carolina Land Fund, formerly the Clean Water Trust Fund, who we got the grant from for phase 2, they've got a grant cycle coming up with a deadline on February 1st. Coastal Federation's offered to help. They're highly confident for this particular grant application, mainly because we were the #1 rated innovative stormwater project for phase 2, and this adds to it. The estimated budget right now for the project is $150,000, and so our 20% share, which would be in next year's budget, would come in at $30,000. Julie pointed out today that she now has clarified ARP ARP spending authorizations, and we have identified it for water, but further flexibility, we could probably use some ARP funds for this project as well. The timeline is the grant application deadline, as mentioned, is on the 1st. We receive word on the award in September, and we have to have the project constructed within 2 years after that. If we are highly confident we will get the grant, and only if we're highly confident we'll get the grant, I'd like to try this summer to have the design and bidding and contractors selected. And then right after the grant award, we could get the project started this winter. So Clark, Sonny, and I have talked to all the affected homeowners, save one. I still haven't got that lady on Willow who owns at Maritime Place, but I'd characterize everyone as not just supportive, but enthusiastic for clear reasons. We've given them all sample copies of the easements and explained there won't be any compensation. We're not, Bill, before you ask, they haven't signed easements yet because we haven't presented them to them yet. But it's a large grant, so I want to get board authorization to apply for it.
I have a motion to.
So moved.
Okay, second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just one comment that was refreshing was a man on Holly who said that this pipe would go to He said that he noticed when it got wet this last year, that it flooded much less.
Yeah.
That even that water table was lower there. So he was enthusiastic.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, the next issue is a quick review of the town's strategic plan. As you know, we're going to be meeting with the Strategic Planning Committee and the chairman, John Ferguson, on January 19th at 2 o'clock here in Town Hall to go over the new strategic plan in some detail. But in the interest of focusing on this and helping the strategic plan out and preparing for that 19th meeting, we have all had a draft of the new strategic plan now since before Christmas. And I think we've also received Chairman Ferguson's proposed PowerPoint slideshow that he's going to talk from on January 19th. And I wanted to use this opportunity to see if any of the commissioners had any preliminary thoughts or questions or observations so that we could give them to the strategic plan and let them be focusing on getting ready or preparing for some of these issues on January 19th, if there are any. But if nobody has any comments at this point, we'll just reserve all of our discussion for January 19th. So does anybody have any initial reactions or questions about the plan they would like to raise at this point? No?
No, I think they've done a good job
Mm-hmm.
putting forth what they were proposing at this point. So I'm ready to hear more January 19th.
Okay. That takes care of that. Thank you very much. The next agenda item is topics for our offsite meeting. And here, I mentioned right before the meeting that I did print off the agenda and the packet that we used for last year's offsite meeting, and I'll be happy to send that to anybody who would like to see it. But what we're doing right now, during our offsite, we generally meet with the chairs, sometimes the members too of the other committees and boards, and we review their progress and we give them some direction for the coming year. We'll also have, at that point, a pretty good idea of what our new strategic plan will be under our belts as well. But we also use the offsite as an opportunity to do some brainstorming on a number of issues that are in the back of a lot of our minds. And then we also kick off the annual budget season. So all these things will be on the agenda. But right now, I think what we're really looking for is kind of a list of those brainstorming items that people would like to raise.
I've got one. Just how is the staff going to handle the next 5 years of project management?
Very good. Anybody else like to raise an issue?
We've talked over the past about trying to locate some kayak access spot. There's a lot of people. One of the few comments I get from citizens is they have no place to put their kayak in. I put mine in behind Town Hall back there. That's just, if you got any ears on you, that's a tough deal.
Mm-hmm. Kayaks, the sound side,
Yeah.
kayaks.
Right.
Ooh, that's wicked through there.
I don't know that there's a solution to it.
I got a couple, and this may or may not be the right place for it, but our financial policy, has that been updated since it was originally put in place? So the financial policy is now 10 years old, June of 2012. It may be it may be perfect the way it is, but I would suggest we just review the financial policy and
Good suggestion.
either re-sign it or just affirm that it's what we want it to be. I suspect it is, but it may be worth just going through it. I would also suggest that it would be worthwhile to review the estimated fund balance on 30 June as it relates to what we're thinking about and contemplating for this tax increase. There is a relationship there, but you said that I think the general fund balance policy was 50%. This says 60%, I think, unless I'm reading it wrong. So regardless, I'm not here to debate that, but I think that a discussion about the fund balance as we go forward, because I'm sure everybody knows that's what we live on. And the whole point about keeping our reserves between 1 July and about 31 December, particularly as it relates to potential storm recovery funds. So I think it would certainly be helpful. The last thing I have is, do we have any expectations of ourselves as commissioners other than being just good public servants? Are there areas that we think we potentially could engage outside of Pine Knoll Shores regionally where we may not be? And we may be exactly where we want to be, but if there are areas that perhaps we haven't engaged fully or effectively, it might be a time to actually talk about that.
I think it would be a good idea to review. I know Clark is on the Eastern Carolina.
No, it's me.
Alicia is now doing that. And like I'm the vice chair of the Beach Commission, but I think it would be interesting to look or see just exactly what the different commissioners are doing on the outside and maybe what other opportunities there are. It'd be useful. I mean, there are a few things, that we probably could have participated in, but because of COVID and the fact that we weren't invited, like for example, the county says they published notices of the meetings they had when they were developing their county land use plan, but we missed them somehow or other. And
A lot of people did.
I think it's
Slipped through the cracks.
it slipped through the cracks. Yeah, no, we shouldn't let those kinds of things happen. Now, I raised a couple of points that are in the paper here about the size of some of our parks and recreation activities, especially on holidays, and they're getting quite big. And on a holiday, we have to wonder if we want to bring in 10 firemen and policemen to deal with a parks and recreation issue on what is a family holiday. And there are a number of other things like that that have to do with how big we want some of these events to grow, especially because they bring in a lot of people from outside of Pine Knoll Shores. And I mean, there are both pluses and pros and cons to we're putting ourselves on the map. And I think it'd be worthwhile to discuss those things. And there are a couple of other items too. We may also want to think about succession issues for senior staff in the long term. Just start looking at calendars and thinking about what kind of retirements and promotions and hirings we may have to do in the next 5 years or so. I think it's not too early to get started on that. Now, for everybody who has come up with an issue, what I would like to ask you to do, and this will help staff out, is to do no more than a 1-pager or 1 paragraph or 2 paragraph background paper, whatever format you like, but just keep it short and to the point that kind of frames the issue and explains what it is that can be used as a start for the discussion. And please, if you would send those to me, let's say by the end of the month, I can just play with them and kind of put them in some form and give them to Charlie. Will that be enough time, Charlie? If I collect them, or you send them to me and Charlie?
I'll set the agenda on February 4th, so.
Okay.
You give them to me that Monday.
All right. Okay,
Can you do a favor and send a reminder email
I will.
Friday?
I will. And maybe I'll do a sample as well or something like that, you know. Would anybody, and yeah, the full scale agenda and, you know, the agenda packet and all the details of when we're going to meet with the different boards and commissions and all that kind of stuff will have to be worked out. But that will be forthcoming. So does anybody have any questions or further comments on? Pardon?
That I had recommended. Could I mention a couple of things?
Sure.
So we talked over the course of the year. The staff met yesterday on the same subject. And fire department volunteer shortages recently.
Yeah.
We have to do some follow through on water enterprise fund finances. Specifically, as it improves to potential rate increases.
I was just going to bring up.
Potential. A transition plan, as someone else has said. I'm not sure this one cuts the mustard for a strategic issue. It might come up in regular meetings. Because we're filling up 2 days real quick here. So John, strike that, only going down to 1 day between that list and sidewalks, we might need to. But there's 2 ordinances that the staff recommends we relook at. One is right-of-way parking for vehicles. I want to emphasize for vehicles, not boats and trailers. And the other is a requirement for burn permits for manufactured and homemade burn pit permits. I'll probably punt those to a regular meeting because we got a long one, but we'll let you know the staff's thinking about both of those. Making recommendations.
The right of way go to the planning board? The right of way parking?
I mean, I don't want to do that until we talk about it first, for sure.
On the burn permits, well, yeah, what is our policy now?
Well, I mean,
Fire pits.
The short version of this is technically our ordinance. If you go out to Lowe's and buy a little metal pit and throw a starter log in there and 2 logs, you have to get permission from Jason to do it. And Jason believes, and I think he's likely right, that was meant to prevent people from burning brush and doing other things. But, you know, so he deals with that all burning season, 11 months a year.
Propane.
No, I think he said last time you
That's
didn't.
just like a grill, right?
He believes that likely right to prevent, vegetation burning and things like that, as opposed to, someone having little burn pits set up in their backyard.
So we're looking at a clarification of that.
No, he'd like to change that so that
Okay.
they don't have to get all
Okay, got it.
authorization to light their starter log.
Got it.
Good thing, yeah.
Right away.
The right-of-way parking.
Yeah, I mentioned this briefly last summer. I'd like the board to take a look at considering authorization with permitting for homes with more than 2 adults, which is what Ryan and I think the current ordinance was written for.
To allow them to park a vehicle, not a boat or a trailer on the right of way.
Overnight? Without a permit?
With a permit.
Oh, okay.
Okay. There's nothing else on that topic. Let's move on to the town manager and staff reports. We have that, and then another public comment period, and then we're going to go into a discussion of COVID. So I'll turn it over to town manager.
Okay, first I'd like to talk about the Ncod drain line issue. Want to let the board know we had a conference call with all 4 impacted landowners in December. Their main concerns were warranty on this. One of the 4 is a contractor and wanted detail on how it works. I'm talking the sleeve, the pipe through a pipe. And so that's due outs I have to him. I met with a former DOT employee in the county, and he believes DOT's argument's invalid. But he suggested that prior to any legal action that we had talked about with Neil, that we request assistance from government avenues. And lastly, he mentioned he has experience in this, that this is a common issue in DOT, that they build stormwater infrastructure and then don't follow through on long-term maintenance, but that doesn't matter at this point for us. So the next step is John and I met Thomas Taft, who was our DOT board member, 4 weeks ago. And I'm going to contact him. I haven't done it yet, and ask for his assistance here. So that's kind of where we're at. I told the 4 affected owners that the town was committed to fixing it, but not to assuming long-term maintenance. I think they were supportive of that. A couple of them are full-timers and had read it. That's all I have on that particular update. So any questions, gentlemen?
Keeps on giving.
Just a quick report on the first 2 weeks with the new solid waste contractor. The first week, which was not this week, but last week, we went into Tuesday. Yesterday, he wrapped up regular service by 4:30 on Monday, which I assured him was a lot different in July than in January. But he was back in town yesterday with some missed service, and the quotation marks are, we get a lot of those, and not everyone gets them out there first thing Monday morning or Sunday night. But he was very good in coming back. So I was happy with that, but not happy with the recycling. And we need to make, and we're starting to do this, a major push on public education on recycling. Specifically, as we have all seen in the emails, plastic bags in the recycling just won't work. They're turned away immediately at Sunoco. I want to take another ride out there. I don't know who the Public Works Commissioners are, but I'm going to invite you, once we think it's safe to do so, to go with our contractor to the recycling site. So we did this a few years ago. It just never took off. I'm going to do my best to find a recycling czar, which is what I'm calling him or her. Clerk, we met the one at Oriental a few years ago. We need kind of a zealot on recycling to help us get the word out and push this, but we're working that. So bottom line, after 2 weeks, I'm happy with the complaints or lack thereof I'm getting with Charlie. We've had one banged up can, and we've had very minimal missed service relative to what we saw the last 2 years. That's all I have on that issue. So, yes, Bill.
Just a comment. I know that the first week we had that horrendous weather and wind, and they were delayed, getting around to Tuesday, a lot of places, which is understandable. But the 2 weeks that they have done it, my cans have been sitting upright, lids closed, not and off the street. So
I mean, yeah, they're definitely playing nice now. I mean, part of the reason for delay on that 40 mile per hour wind day is Dave said that his employees were running down the street picking up garbage because they didn't want on the very first day to have garbage up and down.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Second thing is, perhaps when people don't put it out in time, if we could notify them in advance where they're going to start. And if they're starting in certain end of town, if those people don't have it out, well, perhaps we're still going to serve them, but
I have to see how consistent that routing is.
I've run my trash out.
I'm a little scary
coming around the corner.
to have to put them out based on garbage truck schedules. But we could find, I think he has a general plan now.
Probably.
I think you need to have a time.
It needs to be out. It needs to be out the night before.
Someone's gonna say, well, he said he wasn't gonna be here, and then they end up coming because there's not much track. I think the time of that day has to be, no matter when the schedule is personally. 7 or 8 or whatever.
So
I want an early morning person.
Talk a little bit about brown yard waste bags. We spoke, he actually called me on Christmas Eve day, or excuse me, 23 December, right before we broke. The director of the Division of Waste Management at DEQ, he is one level under the secretary. He was clear that DEQ regs prohibit the bags. And he says that unlike the asphalt, concrete, gravel, and other such things that are allowed in these landfills, these bags are not permitted because they're not inert material. Per DEQ regulations. He also said they're a fire hazard and when wet become odorous. An option he presented, and I owe a citizen a comment on this and she's online right now, so I apologize. An option that they presented is composting. And that is an option, but it requires about a 2-acre site, which we don't have available in town at that level. They don't do it at the landfill that we, at the site we take it to. So I told him that. And he said the only avenue to change this is approaching the Environmental Management Commission on it. So talked to Neil about it, and Neil said if we go in front of that commission, we need to have some hard information behind us. We just can't go in there flag waving. So we put out word for a subject matter expert, and I actually found one, and Larry Sneeden pointed me his way. Thank goodness. His kind of bio is on the bottom, but Rudy Smithwick actually wrote regulation at DEQ on solid waste management for about 8 years. He said that this is, based on his read of the state regulations, almost unquestionably an interpretation issue by an inspector. It's not spelled out that paper bags are not an inert are not inert debris. And he said the idea that the derivative of a tree, a biodegradable bag, is not acceptable for landfill is crazy. So we're going to go to that commission. They have a meeting this month. It's a little too soon, but they're quarterly. But so I anticipate 3 months from now, probably April, maybe going to that commission and asking for some help if we can get an argument put together.
So I guess, Mayor, why? I mean, I understand that it's kind of like a ridiculous interpretation. It is kind of a pain, but I see them coming, they empty cans, they have the knuckle truck now. Why are we spending all this time over paper bags?
Because it's very popular in town, and it makes things incredibly easier for Sonny's guys.
So Sonny's like, hey, the paper bags make it easier. Okay.
Sonny's asked me to.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, I apologize for my ignorance on this, but what do the other towns do?
They use them.
And
Robert, I've gotten so many emails from people in Raleigh and Cary.
The position had been put in, but
a guy in Cary sent me a picture of brown paper bags lined down the street. And maybe they go to a compost site. I don't know, but so it's an incredible. I told Julie earlier today, it was just our bad luck. The inspector was out there when our truck was there.
Does it affect Atlantic Beach and Emerald Isle?
Atlantic Beach and Moorhead use it.
Yeah.
And I'm being very careful to make sure that they can continue to use common sense there if they want. So, but right now we've been directed by the state and asked by the landfill operator not to bring them in. And I want to respect that. So again, fighting this for Sonny's God's sake.
We have no place at all where we could compost it, do we?
Not in town, none of that size. And it'd be an operation, Ted.
Yeah.
It's not just a dump site. Composting is an operation.
And then the smell.
just one last comment, and I know you will, but I think to Neil's point, going before the commission, having our ducks in a row, if we don't, that could be a judgment against everybody if it goes the wrong way. So just a thought.
Lastly, just a heads up that the 50th anniversary planning is going to kick into higher gear. We've met a couple times already. We meet next week. Bringing this up only because I've told the planning members, mainly Michelle Phillips from the History Committee, and Mike Lamar from the PARC, that the board I don't know if you remember, but we gave the Park and History Committee a little bit of extra money this year, seed money for T-shirts and to expand the panels, expand that panel. But for next year's budget, I've told them that from what I've heard in board meetings, that we're supportive of having good events next year, next fiscal year, that is. So anyway. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions on any of that? Okay, next
I
up.
just have one question, not on anything there. Was there any progress on any lighting down there on the east end of town at the town line?
No, Clark.
Person walked around in front of me last night with no light at the crosswalk in Lang Beach. And you're coming out from the beach access, that it's absolutely dark. And
That is a
that's the
dangerous
one
place.
crosswalk that has no light on it.
Right.
I'm
before someone
wondering
gets killed.
if we couldn't get the new condos that are built there, that homeowners association to maybe join us. And the cost isn't that great, so, but I would think they would want to do it.
One of the telephone poles is in town, so we want to pay for it. We can do it, but it's a life death thing. I really think.
It's extremely hard to see there. Okay, anybody else? Okay, finance and administration, Julie Anderson, please.
Okay, so I have 3 items to update you on, so, well, and the public. If y'all didn't know, property taxes were due last week, the 5th. So they are now past due and interest is starting to accrue on a monthly basis on any unpaid taxes. You will, at next month's meeting, I think we used either February or February, I believe, we usually come before you with a list of delinquent taxes to then advertise in March. It's around that time frame, so just look for that coming up. I gotta ask Erica to remind me. The second thing, we had sent out notice that the county reappraisal team was in town.
Right.
And we've received many calls. People think they're inspecting homes. And
They are.
well, they are kind of, yeah. And so they are still here. And just for everybody's education, they visit each property. So what the county is doing is a full list and measure. And so they have not done one, I can't remember in how long, but they're doing a full list and measure of every property in the county. So it's not a normal reappraisal. It's a lot of work. And this is for the 2024 reappraisal. So they'll visit each property. Normally they will ask, they'll kind of knock on the door, tell you what they're doing, and then walk your property. You don't necessarily have to allow them to walk your property, but they can't very well appraise you very good if they can't see everything. And it's actually, the statute states that each owner of real estate is entitled to have an actual visit to their property and observation to ensure accuracy of their property and their valuation. So it's for your benefit, but they are still here. And I'm not sure for how long, but that's what you see, little Cartwright County cars going around town. That's what they're doing.
Is the 2024, does it mean the new valuation will start on January 1, 2024?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So it'll be for our 24-25 tax year.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
But so they will actually be sending out notices and all that probably in 2023 to the people.
No, it's usually probably, it's you get your valuation notices. I think it's around February of that year. So February of 2024,
okay.
I think you would be getting them.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And then Brian mentioned this just a little bit. So the U.S. Treasury made, so, I've kind of joked at past meetings that I've had an interim final rule to look at for the ARP money. So the U.S. Treasury came out with the final rule. And there are some changes in the full document is 430 something pages, right reading.
Yeah.
So very clear and concise.
You haven't committed to memory
There
yet?
are, what's that?
You haven't committed to memory yet?
No, I have not. There are some changes. There's some clarifications and new limitations, not any new limitations. And at first glance of a PowerPoint thing that kind of reviewed it, I didn't see any limitations that would have applied to us. But there are some changes that might benefit us. I will, at the offsite, I planned to So I'm going to learn this 437 pages between now and then, and kind of present to the board if there's any new options that we have to use the remainder of our ARP money for, what those are. And then just a note to inform the board, they actually, in this document or in the PowerPoint thing that I had, they specified in there what some essential services are. Remember the premium pay, you have to be in essential services, and they clearly state state, local, and tribal government employees are essential workers. So that's good news. But I will have more information for you on that at February, because I just did not have the opportunity this week to look into it at all yet. Nor the desire yet, but we'll get there. So that's it.
Any questions for Julie? Okay, thank you, Julie. Next up is Fire EMS. Chief Baker, are you online? Chief Baker. Okay, let's try, we'll come back to Chief Baker. Let's try the Pine Shores Police Department. Chief Thompson, please.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'll go through this stuff real quick. Yesterday, on Monday, we had a audit by the Criminal Justice Standards Division of the Department of Justice. And the inspector looked at our firearms and mandated in-service training files. And they also inspected all of our background investigation files to make sure we're doing thorough backgrounds on new hires. This inspection occurs every 3 years. I'm happy to report we scored 100% on the inspection. And this is in addition to the inspection we went through last year for the League of Municipalities that looked at policy and policy adherence and vehicle maintenance and training and things of that nature. So happy to go through those and be in compliance. We have a new full-time police officer. His name is Jeffrey Chase Kearney. He goes by Chase. He came to us from the Wayne County Sheriff's Office, where he spent the last 4 years. And in his time at the Sheriff's Office there, he worked as a bailiff, a road deputy, and a school resource officer. So we're happy to have Chase. And just speaking of training, we're already starting and trying to get our mandated in-service training out of the year. I think I saw it on Chief Baker's slide. This has been our slowest winter since Hurricane Florence. So we're trying to take advantage of that downtime and get caught up on this stuff, because we'll pay for it later this year. And Sergeant Corey Bishop is attending General Instructor School next month in February, which is a 2-week course.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for Chief Ryan? Sergeant Bishop is a busy man.
Yes, he is.
Great job on the audit. Thank you. Let's see, Chief Baker, are you with us now?
I see he's unmuted. He may have some computer issues right now.
Okay, let's go
He's
on.
having some issues.
I'll work with Jason on that. We'll come back to him.
Okay, let's go on to the Water Department. Sonny Cunningham, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here. As you can see, we had 2 water leaks this past month, and that's going to help our water accountability, of course. And we finally have our well scheduled to be extracted and inspected next month by Pearson Pump. I'll be curious to see what kind of shape it's in, and then give you a brief next month. Well, maybe not. It could be after the next meeting. It depends. They've been really busy doing repair work for other towns, because other towns won't let them come in and get their work done. Anyway, and then we had a backhoe issue. The front bucket cylinder exploded on me, believe it or not. So I got it ordered, thanks to Julie and Mr. Kramer. It's like $1,200. It's worth it. Anyway, the backhoe, besides that's really good. It just happened that it's just a small backhoe, and it's kind of a toy more than a backhoe, you guys. So I try to be careful, but we put a work to it. Anyway, do you have any questions, you guys?
Any questions for Sonny? No. Okay, well, thank you very much, Sonny. Good
Thank you,
work.
guys. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, guys.
I don't know what's wrong with my computer, but whatever. The old doing in my budget. But December, good month. I can't read this here. But this has been like slowest winter since Hurricane Florence. It seems like everybody's going home finally. Just been a good slow December, easy going, good to go. I hope Mr. Connect liked the report I did. I tried to copy what Ryan has done and change it up the way it was requested. But the one thing I didn't put on that report was training hours. In December, training hours always look crazy because there's 1,189 training hours you'll see on the slide. But that is because, like any of our part-timers who have full-time position somewhere else, we know they're out there training, but a lot of times their hours don't get over for our records until the end of the year when we're doing our state roster. And so we get this big pile of training hours and training records from other stations where these part-timers work full-time. So that's why the hours always look skewed.
Okay, interesting. Commissioner, please.
I just want to thank you, Jason, for adopting this format, because at least for me, it means a lot more, than the just 1 month at a time. We can track it this way, just have a comparison as to which way things are trending. So I like it. I'm assuming that about halfway down, I assume that special incident type or something should be.
No, that special incident type, that's probably something we run across that really don't, it's trying to put a round peg in a square hole. It really don't fit to a call type. It could be a cat in a tree. It could be somebody wanting us, I don't know, to move some big rock in their yard or whatever. It just, we really don't have we actually assign call types to the calls ourselves when we do reporting, and sometimes things just get shoved into special incident type. Very few, you'll see there's probably 4 on there about the whole year, or not much more than that. But something, we might go in and pull the boat in out the sound, something to that nature.
The word is supposed to be incident, isn't it? It says inching, I-N-C-I-N-T. I'm thinking, is it incident? Is that what you meant?
I graduated 6th grade, so it'll be all right. I just can't type. Yes, it's supposed to be incident.
Okay, you're excused.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a good one. I'm gonna go back to mute now.
All right. Okay, Town Planner Kevin Reed, are you with us, Kevin?
I am. Can you all hear me?
We can.
He's sitting for Hawaii tomorrow.
Great. Good evening, everyone. First of all, just to start off again, single family landscape permit activity continues to remain robust. We issued 3 single family landscape permits for the month of December. Next week, the CAC will consider 4 additional applications. We have several pending, and as I've reported every month for the last 6 months at least, development activity remains robust in Pine Knoll Shores when it comes to new construction.
Yes.
With regards to the Unified Development Ordinance, really excited. So on January 25th, the town's consultant and focus and Rick Flo is going to kick off that process with the planning board. We have a very robust and aggressive schedule to get to completion. We are going to be tracking our work with the planning board and with staff with workbooks, and every month we'll be adding to that process. We're also going to have workbooks available for the mayor and all the Board of Commission members so you all can follow along as we move through this very important process of updating the development regulations for Pine Knoll Shores. And then from a shellfish lease standpoint and the Shellfish Enterprise Area Program, just to provide you a little background of history, going back about 6 years. In 2006, Pine Knoll Shores was one of the towns among several, particularly on the coast here, that adopted a resolution in support of the oyster aquaculture program in North Carolina, and specifically the development of strategic plans for oyster renovation, including the Senator Gene Preston Oyster sanctuary network. In the spring of 2018, the town became aware of a lease request for a shellfish permit off of the aquarium, and actually it was property owners in Beacons Reach that made us aware of that program. We weren't identified as an adjacent property owner by then NC Dean or now DEQ, and there was a little bit of pushback from folks in Beacon Reach as well as others that used that area for recreation. So in response to that, in July of 2018, we hosted an informational workshop at Town Hall in which Mike Craven, who was the manager of the NC Shellfish program at that time, made a really informative presentation to the town and to the public that talked about the shellfish lease program and how that unfolded. And then in July of 2018, myself and the town manager actually attended a public hearing on the proposed lease for the one in Moke Sound. And while the town wasn't opposed to these leases in general, we did have a couple of concerns. One was that we were never really engaged in the process early on. We felt like we were a partner and should have been aware when a shellfish lease application was submitted. And secondly, in regards to that particular lease, there was some conflict with what was known as a typical recreational area, particularly for the folks in the Beacons Reach area. So we expressed our concern at that time, and then ultimately that lease was denied by the state. Again, our issues aren't necessarily that we're opposed to shellfish leases, but in addition to not being a party to the application process, not being aware of how it impacts recreation, there's also sort of a public safety issue, and that is if you do have a shellfish lease that has a water column lease, which means you've got the debris, if you will, the mechanics for oyster growing in the water, then they become an issue from a public safety storm recovery standpoint. So that sort of led us to 2019. And actually at that point then, there was legislation co-sponsored, actually sponsored at the House level by Pat McElrath, which placed a moratorium on shellfish leases in Moke Sound. That moratorium also established the ability or authorized the ability for a shellfish agricultural enterprise area to be established. That moratorium on shellfish leases expired on 1 July of this year. And town staff was contacted this past December by Owen Mulvey McFerrin. He is the Shellfish Lease and Aquaculture Program Coordinator. I believe he took Mr. Graven's place. He's reached out to us, wanting to educate us on the Shellfish Enterprise Area Program. And we're going to sit in on a brief with him. Staff is on January 25. I don't know a lot about the Shellfish Enterprise program, except that what it does is takes the permitting burden away from an individual person or entity, and it appears that the state is going to establish lease areas and then essentially sublease those areas out. So all the permitting will be done at the state level, and then they'll be contracting with and using aquaculture providers to then go in and actually farm that particular area. Again, we're going to get a brief on that on January 25. At that point, that's all I have, and be happy to answer any questions you might have before moving on to the building inspector part of it.
Yeah, I have one question, Kevin. Are these in channels, or are they in areas where people would like to go across, thereby being recreational? And are they delineated by floats or something so people know, or do they not know until they get in the middle of it?
So so lease areas are identified. And one thing I need to point out too, in doing my research this week in preparation of this presentation, Charlie does have a slide up now that I want to refer to. There is a pending new shellfish lease off of Pine Knoll Shores. And the graphic that's up now shows about a 4-acre area. For lack of a better phrase, it's north and a little bit west of Veterans Park. Probably is about 200 yards offshore. And again, the only information I have at this point is that is a proposed lease. No idea about when it might be processed. But that's it's an important thing to point out. And at this point, that we do have at least one pending. We don't really have an idea at this point where shellfish enterprise areas will be, to your point, Mr. Edwards. We don't have an idea yet where they might establish shellfish enterprise areas. Hopefully, the informational meeting we're going to have with the DMF representative is going to give us an idea of what parameters they might have for establishing these. I'm guessing they're going to use similar siting criteria that they do under current shellfish leases, but I can't be certain.
But they're identified by buoys, are they, Kevin?
Yes, sir. Once an application becomes official, essentially what happens is the applicant is required to place 4 PVC pipes, if you will, at the 4 corners of the lease area with a sign. Ultimately, again, as it goes through the process, there's public hearing, there's environmental analysis done, but essentially, initially on, the initial siting is really some posts in the ground with a sign that says potential shellfish lease. With regard to the more mechanical side of shellfish growing, when you actually have the bags and the water column leases, those are identified. But, obviously during the daytime, they're easy to see. Nighttime, I'm sure there probably can be difficult from a navigational standpoint to identify. And then, of course, again, as I mentioned earlier, anytime you put equipment in the dynamics of boat sound, there's the opportunity for it to become a hazard when it comes to cleanup from a public safety standpoint.
But the difficulty in that particular one, from seeing, just looking at a paper version, is it's right at the end of a channel that comes from the east, comes from the east side. For small boats, I think. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you'd have to make a fairly sharp starboard movement to get around it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yes, I'm wondering where is that?
It's pretty shallow there at low tide.
Yeah, but don't see the channel.
Right, I do.
Was that McGinnis Point?
Yeah, certainly there's a.
Right behind Town Hall.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's McGinnis Point. Yeah.
See what
Yeah.
channel.
Certainly there's the potential there for that location to be a conflict for things. I guess, at least from my perspective, and I certainly can't speak for the board or for the manager. The frustration is we're not engaged early on in the process, and really feel like, as a community, we should be made aware when these applications are submitted, so at least we have an opportunity to be brought to the table early on, along with the environmental people and the permitting folks. And so that's the frustration, at least from my perspective.
If it makes you feel better, I'll have the same issues.
Kevin, just a quick question. Do you know, is this outside the designated channel area? Because it looks like it is to me.
I do not know. I do know as part of the analysis process that the lease application is supposed to be evaluated not only on its impact to the submerged aquatic vegetation, but it's supposed to be, my understanding is supposed to be analyzed based on its impact to boating and recreational traffic as well.
Yeah, I think anybody that's been to the end there, that channel doesn't actually continue off of McGinnis Point.
Yeah.
And I think that what you're seeing there is outside the designated channeled area, but it would be worth asking that question at the meeting. Is this clear of any actually designated channel in that area?
Yep.
Okay, any other questions on this shellfish leasing? Connect.
It's not really a question, but just a suggestion. Perhaps when we become aware of these, I don't know to what extent the state's going to advertise for hearing or anything, but I would hope that our citizens, perhaps we can do it, notify them. So if they need to at least give input, even though the state's going to make the decision, they can be heard. Because as you said, the Beacons Reach one, I was familiar with that. In fact, I attended that hearing on behalf of Beacons Reach, but otherwise that thing could have gone through if some citizen hadn't discovered it.
Good point.
Yeah, again, frustration that we're not engaged early in the process. I do know that that the particular website that I pulled this most recent lease application from, and doing a little further digging into the shellfish lease program, they do have a series of public hearings, and they advertise in advance when the public hearings are going to be held with regard to particular shellfish lease applications. Again, the difficulty is us not being aware of that, but I think we have an opportunity as we do become aware of that to push that information out to our citizens and our property owners so that they're aware of the discussion and the decision-making process as well.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you, Kevin. Moving on, put on your building inspector hat, please.
All right, yes, sir. For the month of December, 15 building permits issued, total value $2,396,350. Issued 4 mechanical permits, 6 electrical permits, and 1 plumbing permit. Total value of all permits issued was $2,521,108. Issued a total of 13 tree removal permits and performed a total of 104 inspections. And as I mentioned earlier, as part of my discussion with the single-family landscape permit, it doesn't appear to be slowing down by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to new construction in Pine Shores.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Kevin on building inspector?
No.
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Safe trip and your vacation
Thank you all.
tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is our town clerk, Charlie Rauchi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On January 5th, the bidding window closed for the Acorn Court Stormwater project. And from that, we received 2 bids, one from Sunland Builders with a cumulative total of $140,000 and one from M&W Land Improvement, which is a subsidiary of Morton Construction, which you probably know. And their bid came in at $97,330. The challenge now is originally in 2019, when we budgeted for this project, the estimation was that the total cost would be $75,000 for construction. So we have a couple options to work through this. The budget we made for this was lumped in with the stormwater project for Pineville Boulevard, and a possible solution would be to divert those funds and use them for this and then look for other grant opportunities for Acorn Court. Or we could look for new grant opportunities now and possibly delay this project for the future. I would recommend possibly a finance committee meeting with myself and Bree, along with the finance committee, to work through this and come up with a solution. Moving forward, I had a meeting with Shannon Jerem with the Arbor Day Foundation, and they're confident that we're going to be able to have a tree giveaway event on March 19th, 2022, which is conveniently North Carolina Arbor Day. And so they're working on setting up their sponsor for that event now. And once they get that sponsor, we'll go into the details of planning that event.
Nice.
Any comments on those before we move forward?
Yeah, on the bids for Acorn Court thing, I think it's a good idea if you get together with finance committee, and then please send a notice out to the commissioners in case, I mean, one or several of us may want to come and sit in on that. But does anybody have any objection to that?
No,
I think
not
that's
at
a
all.
good idea. I also think we need to move forward with that project, however we do
We
it,
do.
and not put it off any longer.
Right.
So we're going to get more expensive.
We would like to get it done before hurricane season as
Yes.
well. So that's
So
something
you
you
got,
can consider.
you got to find a way to do it.
And it's just the pipe, or is it also doing the road?
The pipe and the road.
Good.
Okay.
So on December 7th, the Ken Jones Public Service Award Selection Committee came together to review the applications and select a winner for the 2nd annual award. The committee had a very difficult time choosing a winner out of many outstanding candidates. They were able to do so. However, before I announce that person, I feel it's necessary to show appreciation to all the people who were nominated for the award. Every nominee should feel honored that one of their peers looked at a blank application and were inspired to recognize this person in their tremendous work for all they do for Pineville Shores and beyond. So I'd like to take a moment to recognize Michelle Powers, BJ Peter, Bill Connect, Bonnie Fairnow, John Broadman, Connor Marsh, and G. McDaniel for taking it upon themselves to support their community and help make Pineville Shores a better place to live. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
So this year's winner of the Ken Jones Public Service Award is someone who embodies Ken's spirit for civil service. If you lived in Pinole Shores, even for a short period of time, he has certainly helped you at some point and offered you a level of courtesy that you'll likely never forget. So I'm happy to announce Sonny Cunningham as the winner of the 2023.
Will we be having a ceremony, or I guess it all depends on our agenda item?
We're gonna have a water leak. They call them parties anyway.
Maybe.
Maybe we can present
Can we-
if the offsite.
Can we do this at the offsite? Is
Yeah,
Sonny going to-
presentation.
He does have a birthday in January as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we got to get a picture.
Yes.
Okay. Congratulations.
And
Sonny.
Sunny.
Good work, Charlie. Excellent. Any?
I'm honored, you guys, but oh my God.
Well, just
Wow.
Comes with $100,000 reward.
but you gotta find it.
It'll be in the next water leak.
Okay, we're now at our second public comment period. Do we have any additional comments, Charlie?
I've read all the ones that were messaged to me before the night. If someone would like to make a comment, I'll give them 30 seconds to send me a quick note.
Going, gone.
No comments.
Okay. All right, that brings us to the mayor and commissioner reports. And I will ask if anybody has anything they would like to report before we discuss the COVID policy. Any other reports?
No.
Okay, I'll just make a quick comment about the fact that the consumer price index for December came out early this morning. And it showed that year on year, December 21 over December 20, consumer price index for all urban consumers, all items, rose 7%. Now, if you strip out food and energy, the core, so-called core consumer price index rose by 5.5%. And over the same period of time, December to December, average hourly earnings for all non-farm payroll employees increased by 4.5%. So real earnings adjusted for inflation are falling behind even the core inflation rate, but they're considerably behind the nominal inflation rate. That's all, the only report I had to make there. The other thing we're going to discuss under this item is our COVID policy. As you know, a few months ago, we were all very hopeful that at this time in the new year, that the Delta variant would be subsiding and that we could come together tonight and make an agreement on reopening town hall and trying to go back to normal, whatever that means. We're now at the beginning of our third year of trying to do business under the shadow of the COVID pandemic. And we have a new, very virulent strain of the virus impacting us, with new records of new cases being set almost daily in the United States, in North Carolina, and across the world. So it's really in that context that I think we need to discuss our policy here going forward during this this time of rapid spread. Would anybody like to make a comment or an observation?
I just wanted to clarify, so are we talking about just the meetings? Or are we talking about giving policy to the staff of opening up back town hall and stuff like that?
I think we're talking about both.
All government activity.
Yeah.
Because
Meetings, not just in this group, but any group who can attend, and opening the town hall, and unlocking the doors. not mean opening into office spaces. It just means front doors are open, they can walk up to Betty's desk.
And that was working fairly well when y'all did that, right? I mean,
When they can come in,
Mhm.
to Betty's desk, the safer locks really help, quite frankly.
yeah, I was gonna say.
Really help.
What's the staff recommendation?
My recommendation is, well, first for government meetings, and I'm no more an expert on the virus concerns, but I believe we could open up, I believe if we open up government meetings, government functions with the same degree of protection we have for the meetings we allow right now, which is on-site rapid testing, turning them away, obviously, if they test, limit numbers, which has happened by default, just because we've limited it to the board and committee members, spacing and masking. I'd recommend we open back up. And that's not saying we have less of severity. I just of the virus. I just think we can take the precautions that I'm reading right now that are necessary to prevent ourselves.
I agree with all of them, except for I'm a little concerned about the testing, the time and we know there's like shortages everywhere. Are we gonna blow through?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do it without testing. I think that's the best thing we have.
Well, how many, you're talking about inviting the public, for example, into tonight's meeting, correct?
I think we have Charlie do the geometry. He actually did this once, and we figure out how many. I hate to go back to X's on the floor. I don't think we should have 120 people.
Oh, no.
But I think if we can safely have 10 members of the public spaced in that area in front of us, again, masked, separated, and tested. When Neil advises to do all that, we would have to have the mayor make a declaration, an emergency declaration to allow that. But
Would you have them register ahead of time to come or first come, first serve?
what I would do is for meetings, I would have Charlie put out, if you want to attend, advise, and whatever that number is, the first 20 that sign up are allowed in. So that's my thoughts.
We had an emergency declaration in place. I believe it expired.
We dropped it.
In May.
Yeah. So to do it without an that is like emergency declaration. We would just have to open up normal with no mass, no nothing. You have to have an emergency declaration to.
What I just described, the mayor would have to.
You have to have for them to come in with a mask.
And I think we tell the public we want to open up, but we want to open up safely.
Then that means we'd have to wear masks too.
I would.
I think you probably all can guess my position on it, but I think it's time we go back to normal business. I think there's benefit in taking precautions, but in talking to the other towns, they're not doing any kind of rapid testing. Somebody wants to come in and do business in Atlantic Beach, they just walk in. They don't require a mask. If you want to wear a mask, you're invited to wear one, but I don't know what Atlantic Beach knows that we don't know. Morehead City is the same way.
Emerald Isle's the same way.
And Emerald Isle is the same way. So my view is, and I think your point, absent a declaration that Neil suggested we would have to have, folks are at a point where they can make the decision for themselves. If I don't feel comfortable coming to town hall with a group of folks, then I shouldn't come to town hall. If we think that, I think tonight is maybe a little unusual. I don't know that 20 people or however many we had online, 20 people are going to show up tonight. But I think as everybody has seen in the past, you get 4 or 5, maybe. I don't think we're going to have this tidal wave of people coming into town hall. So I think the risk, as I think you said, Brian, in your note, we play it like the 73,000 yahoos that went to the game. Let people make their own decision, because the reality is they're meeting in other places that do not observe the protocols that we're discussing implementing now. And if they're mature enough and adult enough and informed enough and experienced enough to make those decisions for themselves, then I think we should reflect that in how we conduct business here in town hall.
CDC today, I guess yesterday, said that basically they think everybody's going to get a case
At one point or another.
at one time or another, no matter what we do.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that the chances are going forward that, there's going to be another variant, another variant.
Absolutely.
We're not going to get more people vaccinated in any large degree. People have made up their mind for whatever their reason is.
We
And they're
can,
not going to change
we
that.
can still recommend mask and
Yeah.
vaccination if they come in. We just can't ask for, I guess I just got back from Italy, boy, everywhere you went, you had to show your card.
Yep.
Your vaccine card, but we can't do that. But we can still recommend mask.
Yeah,
I don't like the testing thing.
I would go along with what Robert said. Let's just open it up to the women's club and everybody else again, and maybe say you got to wear a mask. And if you don't wear a mask, you can't come in. And and maybe even push it to
With
the new masks.
With this Omicron variant and the way it spreads, that in some ways, that's exactly the problem. People are going out to other meetings and things like that, and then they come in here.
Yeah.
I mean.
But they're coming in here with themselves.
Right.
I mean,
But they have been, who knows where they've been exposed. And I don't know. It's a difficult thing. I would be in favor of opening this up for government functions, but I think the non-governmental groups, which includes homeowners association, women's club, garden club, I think it's probably too early.
We could phase a couple of months and then.
well, do we care that we force the women's club and the garden club to pay someplace to go?
No, the women's club meets in the bay of the fire department. So I mean, they're still
what's the
meeting.
difference?
It's like, it doesn't make any difference.
I don't.
It's social distance. I think the garden club met in the library today. Fortunately, they've opened up that program room.
Are they really?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
If we open up the government meetings for the outside and not do testing, I mean, that's either Clark. And
We still got a
Commissioner.
limit on
I'm
the
feeling
number.
extremely uncomfortable that we're kind of taking on just open it up. I'm very uncomfortable. I guess people are not paying attention to what's going on. And I don't know what all resident, this isn't an independence issue, folks. It's life or death. So
I agree, Clark. I mean, I think it is, but it's also any one of us and any public citizen still has the option to, if they're uncomfortable, to come in digitally.
So
I
what's the
mean,
wrong thing with asking them to do what we did having this meeting? What's wrong with that? When the federal government's going to put out 500 million of them, right? Tests, isn't that what the?
Clark, and yet we go to the club and we don't do rapid testing there.
Well, I don't go to the club when it's that type of thing.
But other people do.
Well,
Yeah, it's a free choice, and I think that's Robert's point.
I don't think
But that's the club, that's a private club, that's not.
I don't think the implementing the protocols that we're talking about is going to diminish the spread of this to either us or to the other members. We make our choice to be here or not be here.
Well, I honestly disagree with that.
Okay.
I think, our next meeting is the offsite or offsite, the retreat, annual retreat. And we're going to be having a lot of people coming in and out anyway. And, with the planning board, the strategic planning committee, community appearance committee, and then the the department heads to talk about the budget.
Mhm.
So this room is probably going to be pretty full anyway. I don't know,
But
you know,
this would not
with
be in
different
here.
numbers, I don't know how many people from the outside you could actually bring in here during
But
that.
I think, John, to your point, isn't the real next big meeting next week, the 19th, when we have the
Strategic
with the
plan.
special meeting for the board of
That's true.
commissioners?
Yeah.
And I think we've got the whole planning, I'm sorry, the
Strategic.
the SBC plus whoever else decides to attend, unless they decide to attend online.
Right, I mean, for that meeting, the invitation was for this body, the SBC. I asked just yesterday the department heads to come online just because of the, and then leaders of a couple of the other committees. So that'll be the largest group in here, but my intent was, like we do for all meetings, was to test at that. Yeah.
Would you test all of us again?
Yeah.
And I agree with that recommendation.
So I just checked Emerald Isle because they came out with a emergency declaration this week. Optional masking,
Mhm.
and they are limiting numbers at board meetings.
I think that's a good.
Right. Just the measure, just the
It's
measure.
just an advisory. Okay, so it's not, they haven't declared a state of emergency.
If you could see, definitely we can't. I mean, even without COVID, you can't fit but so many people in here. We could set our standards as to how many people in here and say, wear a mask.
The paper report at Emerald Isle is doing some kind of emergency declaration or.
That's what I read also.
I don't know what it meant.
That emerging declaration, they're limiting the number of people that can come into, their town hall for meetings and so forth.
Mhm.
And that's what I was going to bring up.
Right over here.
Would be in favor of, opening up,
Mm-hmm.
no testing,
Yeah.
80.
and, wear a mask. If well, what our current policy is, if you're not vaccinated, we ask you to kindly wear a mask. And just set a number, if it's 20, whatever it is, you can fit in here safely 6 feet apart.
I would do
I would be in
spacing.
favor of that, but I think
Mask.
what you recommended, Brian, was we not do that, give ourselves another month or so. We not do that until the offsite.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I would
I'd
say
recommend the kickoff be the next
February.
board
Right.
meeting, which is effectively the offsite. So
that makes sense.
And
Yeah.
there won't be that much room in here for people on the outside if we have everybody we're talking about.
Yeah, I
They'll
mean,
be
if
coming
we,
and
if
going.
we, if we bring them in for the offsite, if we bring them in piecemeal,
Mhm.
that's good.
What about opening town hall? I think we
Well,
all should go ahead and.
the only, I don't see any issue with opening town hall. We do that next week. But just so we're clear, all that would mean is they can come in the front door and walk up to Betty's desk.
Right. But it's more of a symbolic kind of,
we can
yay,
do
we're
that.
open,
I'm very comfortable with that.
And then let's reassess on outside organizations at the offsite of letting homeowners associations and the women's club use it.
After the offsite.
I'd say, yeah.
That's fine.
So we don't have to make the decision tonight.
And there's a clear difference between women's club that's a limited number of people and the garden club. In some ways, the subcontractors of the town versus a homeowners association, you're not wearing them.
But they're
Right?
meeting,
It's a clear difference.
They're meeting on
they
the
won't have any
weekend.
meetings until.
No,
back
no,
in
no,
summer.
I mean, those are not even in the same ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, I'd even keep the current policy through the February meeting. We're going to have enough people on all the committees attending. So I'd say the public still be just online for that. When we get to our first regular meeting in March, then we open it up,
I agree with that.
How do people feel about the proposal?
Okay, I would say
Commissioner
March would
Connectors
be fine, but I would say if you're gonna let public in, yeah, no testing, but wearing a mask.
To a meeting?
I would just recommend, recommend wearing a mask.
Asking for
Yeah.
clarification.
Mhm. But we're actually gonna still, do you still have to social distance? Like I said, I've seen the games and things on TV. I don't think you're
We have to go to
required.
the worst, but that's just
Yeah.
asking for your clarification, that's all.
I'm really like,
So
I
what
think,
would-
how many people could you?
Would you saying
I'd
we
say about
should drop
20.
testing like for the meeting with the Strategic Planning Committee next week?
Well, do we want to do that soon? It doesn't bother me. I don't mind not being tested and meeting with people, but if y'all feel like y'all want to ease into it, we could do testing next week and then say February 1.
Well, do testing, let's do testing through the offsite.
Okay.
What if a better word?
Yeah.
And then maybe, I like Commissioner, as far as opening the front doors of Town Hall,
I think we need to do that.
It's easy, John.
we can do that, we do that Monday or something, yeah.
Do that tomorrow. Up to the site for a lot.
Okay, we'll open Town Hall and Public Safety Building, but I mean, it's so much more efficient if people do call ahead and make an appointment.
No question about it.
And it's less disruptive to the work of the staff, and the staff is better able to plan and be efficient.
Yep.
So I'd hate to lose that, but I don't foresee swarms of people. I mean, I sit in my office enough and people come to not that many people come to the front door, maybe, 1 or 2 an hour or something like that.
But I think this is a good plan because I think our March and April board meetings will be heavily attended because of budgeting and all of that stuff. And it would be good to make sure the offsites, not as much, but March, April, May, more and more people will want to come in. So we need to facilitate that.
Let's plan on having then the public at our first board meeting in March, and everyone subsequent to that. And when it comes to the other committees, I guess the public will be invited to them.
Mm-hmm.
Should we do the same starting in March?
With no testing?
I would say no testing, yeah.
With the public, yeah, no testing, no?
I'm still suggesting we do the social distancing part of it.
Yeah, but no tests.
But no testing.
Yeah. I'll
Starting in March, but we'll do testing through the offsite.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for the all committees in the rest of this month and
Part of the
February.
problem, John, in this country, in this area, is every organization has totally different rules on this. Right. St. Francis by the Sea Church says masks are optional, and that's it. And try to social distance. And you go around and everybody's got different rules and it's confusing. And I agree with Robert. We are going to be stuck with some form of a virus. We're going to end up getting our annual booster shot. We might as well figure out a way to coexist with this stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
So we might as,
I love Chicago. They closed the schools and kept the bars open.
and they kept the bars open. It's silly. There's just no rhyme or reason.
Just spreading germs.
So I'm going to summarize what I think I heard. We're going to open town hall and PSD front doors immediately. We're going to continue to recommend we wear masks, which I think is what our signs at the doors say now.
Yeah.
We're going to do testing through the offsite and then stop it after the offsite. And then we're going to open all town meetings of any type, not just this group, starting in March.
With social distance, and I think Bill said.
So I want to make sure the board's okay. If you'll let me check with Neil and find out what, if anything there needs any type of declaration by him to implement, we can do that.
What are we going to do with women's club and those groups?
I think
April, that March or April, we should decide that offsite whether we want them to use the facility.
If the surge and the virus, kind of reaches a peak and starts receding, then
In March, April, they can come back, yeah.
the rate it's going, we're going to run out of candidates,
I think they say by like this week, next week?
End of the month start to slow down.
Yeah.
But is there a consensus though on social distancing? I heard some didn't, at least limiting the number of people.
Yeah, I think it's limited.
According to Neil, that is also something that you need under a state.
Yeah.
I think
Otherwise,
that
we can't limit beyond
It's irrelevant, yeah.
I think the social distance, and I may be naive in this, but I think the social distancing is going to work itself out, because I just don't see a meeting with that many people coming. You're not going to maximize unless there's a budget meeting or something like that that really draws a lot of people, which I kind of doubt. Some people will still want to attend virtually.
Yeah.
So I think the social distancing will be something that you don't have to worry about, because you're not going to have that many people have the social distance.
We can recommend social distancing just like we do recommend wear masks. And we sit the chairs out, you know,
Yeah. They're gonna hug a kiss out in the lobby here anyway, so.
we're gonna all hug.
I think having masks out in the lobby, having the hand sanitizer, all that stuff that you see in other places, I think it's a good thing. Some people are going to use them, some people are not, but at least you're there. They're there for folks to use if they choose. But I think the mask optional thing, we're a bunch of hypocrites if we're going to force everybody else to wear a mask and we're sitting up here tonight without any masks on. I think it needs to be optional.
We've got a lot of company.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
It'll be
Yeah,
optional.
no doubt.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I took from the board, optional masks.
I would say, so recommend social distancing if you want to public attend. Because
I'm
we're
just
not even social distanced. I mean,
People,
am I 6 foot apart from Bill?
No, but you're facing.
people are comfortable wearing a mask, they'll wear a mask. I mean, if they want to.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
And people are.
So just so we're clear, I'm gonna run all this by Neil, and if he says in order to do what I just read, again, open town hall and PSB doors immediately, recommend wearing masks or optional, testing only through the offsite 1 month from now after that, so end testing effectively after the offsite, open to the public starting in March. And outside groups, TBD. Right. If Neil says, hey, you need to sign something and we need to publish it to do that, then we'll do that.
I would think that it wouldn't, because we're going to be something less than what we're doing now, and we don't have a declaration at the moment, do we?
Correct.
So I don't know why we would have to declare something less from what we're doing at the moment. But
I think the idea would be, the idea, however, Robert, would be, whether it's with a declaration or not, announce the town hall's open and public meeting invitation to start in March.
Okay.
But we still didn't agree on whether it can be social distancing.
I say recommend social distancing.
That doesn't mean anything, Lisa. Recommending doesn't amount to anything.
Yeah, the problem I think with recommended social distancing is really there's no way to stop people coming in through the doors.
Yeah.
You know, so to me, it's either, that one is either or, unlike masking. That's not either or. Yeah, correct. That is either or. You can do one or the other. Social distancing, you're unlimited.
What were the numbers you looked?
Optional social distancing, you have no
I
control.
think the last time though we were here,
It's been under 10, I think.
it's been about 10 or 12. I would think, I think it will be fine.
You could fit like 18 or 20 chairs up here.
I thought we could. We changed our setup a little bit since then. I'd have to move some things.
I think you recommend by putting chairs, but then you don't beat anybody up if they sit with their spouse.
Where you put the chair?
Yeah.
That's what you.
We could probably do 12 to 15 maybe.
That would be fine.
With the chairs out.
I still think a lot of people will log in online.
Ryan's not gonna like this, because now he's gonna have to put on clothes instead of doing.
No, that's Jason.
Pajamas.
That's Jason that's in his pajamas.
All right. I think we've got a path forward here, depending on what our attorney says to us. And is there anybody else who would like to raise any other thing before we move on? Okay,
We got
thank you,
more?
everybody. 3.5 hours, another marathon. Congratulations, you broke 4 hours. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Thank you.
Me.
We still didn't make a decision. That's social policy.
I think we did. We just said that we're just.
I mean,
I think we're